Folks, as you're filtering in, your optimal seating is going to be in the middle, just so you know, because this is where each candidate will be. So, and there you can see how they're kind of turned facing their interviewer. So you can sit in the middle if you like. If not, you don't have to, but just so you know. Set my timer for 5 minutes. Okay, folks, we're going to start in 2 minutes, so be making your way in here and get in your seat. If you can hear me on the outside, it's time to make your way in. We are starting in 1 minute. Laurie, will you let everybody know we're starting in 1 minute? Oh. Welcome, delegates. We are so glad you're here. We're going to get started because this is going to be a crazy night, and we want everybody to have their full experience tonight. My name is Lisa Sandberg, and I am chair of the Washington County Republican Party, and I'm glad that you're here. We're going to start with an opening prayer by Chad Hansen and then Mary. Both of these folks are from STG 49. She will lead us in the pledge. Take your seats quickly, please. We are having the opening prayer. Yes. He doesn't have to be.
Okay. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet tonight as candidates and as delegates as we weigh in the balance the critical needs of our counties, our state, and our nation. We're grateful for the candidates and for their willingness to devote their lives and their families to this great process. Grateful to live in a free land, a land of liberty, and a republic, and pray that we can do all in our power to keep high standards, to keep this a republic, and to be a blessing to our neighbors and to the world. And we pray for thy Spirit to attend us this evening, that we can enjoy the opportunity to meet and to mingle and to learn and to be part of this wonderful process. We pray for these blessings in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
If you're coming in, just stand because we're going to say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, St. George 49, for helping us with our opening. Hurry and take your seats, please. Tonight is going to be the craziest thing you've ever seen. All the candidates have told me they've never participated in something like this, and they're excited about it, and so I'm excited too. But it's going to require you getting in here fast and getting your seats so that we can get started. The candidates are being sequestered in another room. I'm going to read you the rules of the forum, and then we're going to do a couple of little items of business. So, first rule, Each candidate only has 7 minutes, so it is vitally important that you hold your applause until the end. We do not want to waste any of their time with our clapping. So wait till the end. The other thing is that when we clap, it signals them to bring in the next candidate. So if we clap too early, then they might bring in the candidate at the wrong time. Okay, here are the rules. Each candidate will have a 7-minute one-on-one interview with a moderator. There will be an assortment of questions in the bowl that each candidate will draw from to start the interview/conversation. Then we will just let the conversation evolve organically. At the 30-second mark, will you show us that, Mark? At the 30-second mark, Mark and Jamie are our timers. The candidate will be asked to conclude their thoughts. At the 0 mark, you will see a stop sign. When you see that, that's when I expect you to start clapping no matter what the candidate is doing, okay? And you need to clap loud so that outside that door, they know it's time to bring in the next candidate. The candidate will then, their usher will come and get them and take them out those doors and back to the sequestered room while the other candidate is coming in, and while we make any changes that we need to with the moderator. Candidates will be sequestered during interviews with cell phones not being allowed in the room. This is the really important one, and so I want you guys to help me with this as well. We ask that candidates keep their interview focused on their own qualifications and platforms. If during the initial interview a candidate mentions another candidate by name or implication, that candidate will be allowed a 3-minute rebuttal during the interviews of that specific race, at the following the interviews of that specific race. If during the rebuttal another candidate is mentioned, there will be no further time given for additional rebuttals. And the candidates are being read these rules. They've already had them, but they're being read them and reminded them of this as well right now. We want them to stay focused on each other, and rebuttals take a lot of time. So we're hoping that they will not mention another candidate. The evening will be recorded and streamed after the event on our YouTube channel. I'd like to introduce you to our interviewers. Laurie Terry, stand please. Bill Fowler, Shawn Guzman, Jean Garate, myself, and Jamie Shaw. The timers are Mark Carlson and Jamie Levitt. And in the sequester room is Barry Sawyer and Brandon Morgan. Running technology, thank you, Kimball, for saving us, is Kimball Willard back in the back. We appreciate we're calling it our speed vetting crew. We appreciate them so much. Okay, we have 4 minutes till the first one comes in. Let me go to this. Laurie, bucket. While she's coming up, I'm going to do this. I need to know, 2 years ago, we held a state convention pre-meeting where we met with all of the delegates and we went over the agenda, we went over what to expect, we went over like food issues, parking issues, all those kind of things. We need to know if you would like us to do that this time. So please raise your hand if you would like a pre-meeting meeting. Okay, we will do that. Watch for that in your emails to know when that will be. That will be invited to any state delegate. Okay, bucket.
Y'all know why I'm here. As you know, these venues cost money, and we're trying to put on things for our county and our state, which benefit everyone. So your donations do matter. You can donate cash. You can put in a check written to WCRP, the Washington County Republican Party. There is also a Venmo QR code that you can scan and donate through Venmo. We appreciate anything and everything you give. And to the person who always donates $2 bills, I love you.
All right. We love those too. You guys, we really do appreciate your donations. You help us so much. It cost us, what was it, $650? I think it's $650 to rent this room. And so we appreciate you guys have always brought in enough for us that it pays for the room. So we appreciate that. Okay, let me see the time. Okay. Oh my gosh, we're doing so good. I'm so happy. What else do I need to announce? Nothing. I did have something, and I'm trying to think what it was. It was really important, too. Oh, gosh, it's going to come to me, and I can't use the time during the 7 minutes. So just so that I want you to understand how it's going to go, thank you, Mark. At the 7-minute mark, or at the 6-minute 30-second mark, is when the next candidate is going to be walking in. You don't need to pay attention to them. Let this guy finish what he's doing, and then this one will be ushered out, and this one will come in and sit down, and immediately the 7 minutes starts again. So if we are still clapping, we're taking up time from them. So as soon as you see the next candidate come in, you can stop clapping and we'll get them up there and get going. The other thing I want to let you know is the questions, the initial questions, they're fluff. Just know that. They're not like serious, deep questions. They're fluff questions just to get the conversation going. So don't expect anything outstanding about the question. And when they are... what we expect is that the interviewer will, thank you, we're going to stop and we'll now introduce you to Laurie Terry, who will be interviewing Marlo Oaks. And then I was supposed to announce everything, but I'm not. So here we go. We're just going to go.
We're happy to get started this evening. Excuse me, and that's a terrible way to do it. We are going to start with the softball question. Thank you. And... you can pick your own poison.
Okay, let's see. Am I asking you, or are you asking me?
Here, I will ask you, so
Okay.
you have a minute to think.
Okay.
This is a good one. Who is your role model and why?
Larry Fink, because he manages BlackRock.
Ooh! This man has a sense of humor, too. We like that. Okay, Treasurer Oaks, we're so glad you are here. When you were appointed, you had some very specific very great jobs, and some wonderful experience. Can you explain some of that briefly to us?
Yeah, so when I became treasurer, the reason why I ran for treasurer of the state is because the role and responsibility of the treasurer matched my background. And I looked at who was running, and I was hoping, frankly, to find somebody that had the qualifications and background that were necessary in my mind. I did not see that, and so I felt like I needed to run. Most of my background is investment management. I'm the only independently elected state treasurer in the entire country with institutional investment management experience. That's a mouthful, but it's very important, and you'll understand why when we're done. But because of my experience, I've been able to speak out on issues that are critical to all of our economic freedom. But the most important part is independence, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, I think.
One of the first things that I remember reading about is you pulled $100 million from the BlackRock investment company.
That's a good memory.
Explain that and your motives behind that.
Yeah, so really the power of the treasurer is in the markets. As a market player on behalf of the state, I'm overseeing the management of the money of the state. And so that's really the power that I have, is where do we invest our money? And when I did a deep dive into ESG and saw that BlackRock was one of the main players, not the only one, but they're certainly a kind of the poster of ESG, I felt it was very important that we not support that activity in the marketplace and that we divest.
Wonderful. A lot of people here are new and they are unfamiliar with what ESG is. Can you give a brief explanation and why you're so adversely against it?
Yes, absolutely. This is really important for you to understand. Our economic system is based on you and I at the center. Companies are trying to meet our demands. It's us as individuals. It really is our economic freedom that is encapsulated in our free market system. Companies are trying to meet our demands. ESG comes in and says ESG means environmental, social, governance. And these are requirements that are being pushed on companies that are essentially political in nature. And because they're political, they don't belong in the capital markets. These decisions that companies are making should be based on economics and economics alone, not politics being pushed down on them. And so what we've seen is a political agenda that's coming from the top, from the UN, that these companies have signed on to pledges that say we are going to cut our emissions, for example, in our portfolio, or we're going to push social justice on companies that we invest in. And so what this does is it changes the economic system. It looks like it fits within our free market system, but in fact, it will take over the economic system and change it completely from a bottom-up to a top-down centralized control. We either stop it or we destroy our economic freedoms. And I'll stop there so I don't get too excited about it.
That's a wonderful explanation. You've also been very assertive in leading the charge against the national asset companies. What happened there?
So natural asset companies, this was a proposal by the New York Stock Exchange that to the Securities and Exchange Commission at the end of September. And the goal was to create a company whose purpose is not economic activity. It is to basically manage land for sustainability. And what this meant was this would stop all economic activity on land, public and private. And so you think about what happens in Utah. 67% of our land is owned by the federal government. We have critical activity that happens on federal land. For example, grazing, mineral extraction, oil extraction. We are talking about the destruction of rural America should the New York Stock Exchange be allowed to create this new natural asset company. And so I fought very hard to prevent that from happening, and I was very pleased to see on January 17th, New York Stock Exchange pulled the rule from the SEC, and a lot of that based on a lot of the work that was done.
You know, generally we think of a treasurer as a passive person, just there to obey the laws and
That's why I got into
count
this.
the money.
I did not see this as a political office.
And he has been a fighter, I'll tell you. He has been incredibly effective in fighting it against the federal overreach and dangerous and destructive ideas. Pick one or two that you'd like to share with us that you're most passionate about.
Well, I would say the most important part of this position is its independence. And there's an effort right now, the first time that I am aware of, that a bill has actually been written at the state legislature, HB 545, please look it up, where it contemplates doing a study on whether the auditor, the attorney general, and the treasurer should be appointed. They need to stay independent. Thank you.
Please give him a big round of applause. He is a fighter for Utah, and we are so lucky to have him. Thank you.
Hey, Ty.
Thank you guys for coming out.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Have a seat right here. Everyone, this is Ty Jensen, running for Utah House District 2. And we are going to start off with our first random question. And what changes will you make to the office you're running for?
So the first change, you guys hear me?
This is Ty Jensen.
Okay, so the first change I want to make is we are going to keep Congress at home with no more omnibus or minibus bills. Single item bills only, and that's it. The Speaker was elected to do that. We didn't do that. We need to hold them accountable, and I'm going to make sure that happens.
What drew you to this? Why did you decide to run? Tell us that.
I decided to run because after witnessing both my parents die and dealing with Social Security, dealing with the healthcare industry, and watching our government turn on its own people, I said, you know what? I am one of the people. I am one of you. Enough is enough. I'm going to hop in, because they got to go through us. We are the true rulers and kings and queens of this nation, not the elite class and not the managerial class. It is us, and the buck stops with us, we the people. We are the leaders of the Constitution as per our forefathers. Let's uphold that.
Okay. Ty, as you've been out campaigning, what have you found are the issues within District 2 that you're running for? What are the issues that the citizens have that they want to see change?
Water is the #1 concern among all of you. I know you guys live here in southern Utah. I live in central Utah. Water is the #1 thing that we have to worry about. Right now, we are at a surplus, which is fantastic. We need that surplus. But we've had many years where that hasn't been the case. So what we need to do is create a storage system instead of letting it run out into the West Desert or just run off to California for them to use. We need to make sure that we're able to hold on and store that water for our use first and not just let it go away. Another issue is land acquisition. The BLM has way too much land, way too much authority. We need to rein that back and bring it back to the state and bring it back to the people. You guys pay for taxes. You guys pay for everything. So let's get the BLM and the federal government out of the land here in Utah.
Okay. Besides land and water, are there other issues that you've seen out there?
As far as cyber, yes. We get censored every day on Facebook, Twitter. Well, not Twitter anymore, but we get censored on every social media platform, YouTube, and whatnot, and that needs to end. There should not be Silicon Valley telling us that our views and our opinions don't matter and only let the leftist elitists decide. That's crap. That's got to end, and I will help Donald Trump secure the Digital Bill of Rights, making it free speech, whether it's in public or online.
What skills and what skills do you have that you feel you're going to bring to the table that will help you to be successful?
I worked a lot with people up front, up close. That is the one thing I actually know how to do. See, I work for a small family business, and I work online. I know how to connect with every single one of you face to face, and that is something the American people need, not just in front of a camera, but to be upheld to the people, by the people, and for the people. Having somebody that will show up and show out for all of us every single time, that's what I'm willing to do. Because I work for you, you do not work for me.
Okay. How do you plan to communicate and stay accountable to your constituents if successfully elected?
Easy. You got to be transparent. And you can take a Marjorie Taylor Greene point of view on this and be online, upfront, and all over the place. That's the #1 thing. That is actual transparency, is when you can sit here, go in front of a camera, and be upheld to your constituents, because they can always come back and say, hey, remember this on this date that you said this, and we have the proof. That's the thing. I will do that for you every single day, every single time. If there's a bill you don't like, you email me, you call me in my office, and you say, hey, I want you to do this because I want you to kill it. Here's the reasons. I'll look into it, and more than likely, I'll vote no on almost every bill.
Okay. What do you think is the secret to serving in politics without becoming disconnected with the people that you represent?
Don't be bought and paid for.
Okay, good.
Just be upfront. Don't take dark shadow money. Just take the money that you're allotted in Congress, and that's it, and get rid of insider trading.
Okay. What are the responsibilities of a representative of Utah's 2nd Congressional District? What would be your responsibilities?
To vote on behalf of the people that send me to D.C. So if they send me, I'm going to vote no a lot, especially on big old bills. Big old bills have a bunch of fat and pork in it that I will vote no every single time.
Okay. Are we 30 seconds, Mark? Okay.
15.
Closing remarks, real quick.
I'm Ty Jensen. I'm not a politician, I am here to make sure I earn your vote as a committeeman or a congressional member. Thank you.
It's good to see you, Colby. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
See where my wife is first.
Colby Jenkins, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we are going to start with the first question here. Colby, we'll get going and give you your time. What was the hardest job you've ever had to work?
The hardest job I've ever had to work has also been the most rewarding, but leading troops in combat. As a combat veteran, Green Beret, I've been, well, thank you. 31 years ago was the first time I swore an oath to support and defend our Constitution. And that oath has been core and central to me for 3 decades. And so I've had multiple jobs along that journey that have reinforced that time and time again. But taking my Special Forces A team to Afghanistan and leading troops in combat, commanding that fire base where I was the senior guy out on the frontiers of Afghanistan chasing bad guys with my Green Berets and our Afghan partners. And so living out there on the frontier, preaching democracy with our rifles, and then also making sure that we were reinforcing the local civilizations with goodness was important. And why it was tough is because 3 weeks before I deployed, our youngest daughter, Olivia, was born. And so she was 3 weeks old when I deployed to Afghanistan. I left my wife, Heather, with a 3-week-old baby, and our older daughter was almost 4. And so leaving 2 young girls behind with my wife was difficult. But it's what we signed up to do, and it's what we do in the service of our nation. And what carried me through that difficult job was our youngest daughter, this Olivia. Knowing that I was going to deploy, we named her Olivia Hope, in the hope that I would return, that I would come back, that I would survive combat and actually be able to be her father. And so that hope carried me through those days and days of combat operations. It being shot down in a helicopter in Afghanistan with my team and having to fight evil like I've never seen before. Very rewarding, but very tough as well. And happy to say that brought back every single one of my men alive. So it's great.
Thank you for your service. What would you say were the lessons that you learned serving that will translate into leadership and service to our state?
Yeah, thank you. So I think a key characteristic of leadership is to recognize that as a leader, you are not the smartest guy or gal in the room. And as a commander of an A team, those Green Berets are the best at what they do. They are the top. There's a weapons guy, a medic, an engineer, commo, all of their talents, they are the best at what they do. And then you have the young captain who has to step in the midst of all of those experts and be able to lead them towards the accomplishment of our mission. And that okay, I'll look out here. Thank you. Okay, yeah, that's a lot better. Thank you. So the elements of leadership I learned there was I had to make sure that all of those experts were rowing together. That I was not afraid to say, hey, I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about this? This is our mission. We've got to take down this target. Here's the circumstances. Here's all the things that are influencing this operational environment. How can we best go about accomplishing our mission? And that there was no shortage of ideas. But at the end of the day, it was my responsibility to make sure that we were successful. And so as a leader, it's recognizing you're not the smartest guy in the room, that it's okay to ask for help, and that it's important to surround yourself with experts, because those experts are the ones that will truly solve those tough decisions that are before us. But ultimately, it's the leader who's responsible for that.
You know, and as you ask that question, what do you think, as you've been out on the campaign trail asking that same question of the people, what are you hearing? What are the issues that we have in District 2 that you plan to help solve?
Yeah, so without fail, we've done almost 40 events now through 13 counties. You know, our district is 13 counties big. without fail, the number one issue over and over again is the border. What are you going to do to help us secure the border? How are you going to help President Trump secure the border? What kind of funding are you going to make sure that our government properly funds to secure the border, not subsidize illegal immigration, which is what's happening now? What are you going to do to secure the border? So it's the border, 1, 2, and 3 is what I hear over and over again. And then beyond that, I get asked about Ukraine. I get asked certainly about our water and lands issues. How can I help best keep the federal government overreach from out of our backyard? And that begins first with electing Trump, making sure that we get the man in office who did the most for our water and land under his tenure, and how I can best reinforce that.
Awesome. Yeah. What else are you hearing besides the border?
Yeah, water and land as well, and then certainly the deficit. You know, Friday it'll be 2 weeks. $1.2 trillion omnibus package, 6 appropriations bills sandwiched into one. After people share their frustration with me about the border, they say, when is someone going to stand up and say, enough is enough? When is there going to be enough Republicans with courage to stick together and say, enough is enough? We've got to stop spending our government into a fiscal oblivion. And that's what's happening. 2 weeks ago, that happened again. Now, the Democrats, every one of the Democrats in the House of Representatives voted yes for that $1.2 trillion. Is that until we're done? Oh, wow.
There we go.
Okay. Holy smokes.
This is go time.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll just wrap up on that, yeah.
Wrap up. Yeah, you're good.
When we can have enough Republicans, which is where I will stand, that vote with Republicans, that say enough is enough, and are not going to get peeled away by the Democrats to continue advancing the Schumer and Biden agenda, that's where change will happen. There's a reason we have a slim majority. There's a reason we have a slim majority, and that's because we fail to stand up and have courage.
Okay, guys, give us just 1 sec. We're going to get Celeste on here. Kimball, this looks different. Whiteboards. What?
Breakout rooms.
There we go, right there. Okay.
Okay, join Celeste.
Join there.
Okay, you're already joined. You're already joined. Join. Yep, join.
Join.
And yes.
Yes.
And then expand this as soon as it gets up there.
And then we'll plug it in.
Now expand. Okay, there you go. Okay, go fast because she's.
All right.
Her time is way gone.
Celeste, are you with us? And let's make sure, unmute. There we go.
There you go.
Celeste, hi, it's Bill. Can you hear me?
Tell her to unmute. Okay.
Yes, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your service thus far. We're going to start out with a random question that I just drew out of the bowl.
Okay.
Okay. If you are elected, how would you balance family and public service?
Well, that's kind of a trick question for me. I
Yep.
am not married. I don't have kids. I live with my sister, so I guess she would just have to get used to me not being home very often, which she's used to because I am currently elected. I know that's a problem for a lot of elected officials. I have a lot of respect for people and the sacrifices they make to balance that. I'm blessed in that I don't need to be home at bedtime, so I can spend my time serving the people of the 2nd District.
Awesome. Okay. Why is serving in this capacity important to you?
That is the $1 million question, right? I've always wanted to be useful. I've always wanted to be helpful. If you look at the things I've done in my life, I've tried to find ways to help people and to solve problems. And this job is an ultimate problem-solving job. There are a lot of things that I used to be angry about policy-wise or really frustrated with policy-wise. And now I get to be in the room where it happens and set policy, solve problems, go to work for the people of the 2nd District. When somebody calls me and says, this agency is causing a problem, we can't get them to move, I get to go to work on that and come back and say, we got the result you needed. So the reason I want to do this is because I like solving problems, and I feel like representing people is sacred in some ways. It's an honor to be able to go fight someone else's fight on their behalf, and I am really honored to be doing that. I'm really grateful to have that opportunity, and I want to keep doing it.
Awesome. Now, since you've been serving, what do you feel are some of the problems that you have solved already?
Yeah, I have done several things. I've introduced several bills that I think are really important for the 2nd District, including the Hydro Act that addresses, the cost of power during a drought, the True Cost Act that requires the federal government to tell people what it actually costs them when we spend money. The Water Rights Protection Act makes it so the federal government can't require that people give up their water rights in order to have permits on federal land. I've also opened 4 offices in the district to make sure that people know how to find me, that I'm really accessible. I am really aggressive about being on the radio and sending out social media and making sure people know where I am and what I'm doing. In fact, if you tune into the Andy Griffin show on Friday, you'll hear Speaker Johnson and me together on his show talking about what's happening in Washington, D.C. So some of the problems I've solved are, introducing bills to address issues that people in Utah have, but also solving the problem of people in Utah feeling like Congress is distant and inaccessible and something that happens somewhere else, not something that they're part of. So I've tried to make people in the 2nd District be as much a part of what I'm doing as I possibly can. And I'm just going to keep doing that, keep making it more accessible, make people feel like their government is something that actually represents them and not some distant entity that does things to them.
Okay, very good. What and now that you've had some experience so far, how do you handle when you make decisions, obviously, that are controversial, that some people are happy with, some are not? Like, how do you handle that?
Theoretically, if that were ever to happen. No, part of being in Congress is you have to make tough calls. That's part of what leadership is about. The way I handle it is I am as transparent and as responsive as I can possibly be with my constituents at letting people know how I made decisions and why I made the decisions I made on their behalf, because I'm very aware that I'm representing them when I make these decisions. We've talked a lot about the spending bill. Everybody talks about the spending bills. I was on a stage in Washington County within 24 hours of that vote. I stood there in front of my constituents and told them what I was doing. Sorry, I can't read whatever that is.
That says 1 minute left.
1 minute?
Yeah.
Okay. But it was important to me that those bills were part of regular order. In the Senate, it was a different story, but in the House, those bills went through hearings and committees and regular order, and that was really important to me. And it was important to me to show up and explain that to my constituents.
Okay. How do you, as you've been out campaigning, what are the issues that still exist for the voters out there right now?
It's the same issues that existed before: spending, inflation, and government overreach. I haven't solved all those issues in 4 months. It's going to take more time to solve those, but that is what I spend all of my time on: spending, inflation, government overreach. So I voted for spending bills that are spending cuts. I'm working on policies to address inflation, and I work on government overreach at the micro level and at the macro level all day, every day.
Awesome. Thank you, Celeste. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for doing that. How do we get out of here?
Okay, we're on to the Senate candidates, and our first candidate up today is Jason Walton. Thank you for being here today. I'm gonna ask you to draw a question out of here and hand it to me, and I'll read it to you. Have a seat. Okay, this is like a job interview. So we're going to ask you a job interview question.
It is a job interview.
Okay, we're ready to go. Tell us about a time when you made a mistake or experienced a failure and how you dealt with it.
You know, so I'm a business person, and I haven't been in political office before. And the first business I ever started, I don't know if there's any entrepreneurs here. So all right, yeah. So the first business I ever started, this advice I give to entrepreneurs now, I made a commitment with my partner on a handshake that we go give this 3 years, and we would partner up. We'd own this company 50-50. We'd put 50% of the money in, and then we'd be partners. So we went and started this very first pest control company, and literally like 3 months in, he said I needed my money back. A little bit while after that, he said, hey, anyway, he changed the terms. And so the reason I bring this up is I would say the mistake was too many entrepreneurs start businesses, and when they start those businesses, they partner with someone who has the same skill set that they have. And when there's no differentiation, then that's going to be a bad thing for you. So that's my advice. But secondly, I stuck out my 3 years because that was my word.
Great. Okay, so we've all seen the campaign ads. We've seen what people have done in their past that they think makes them qualified. But you're talking to a group of people that really want to get to know you. So tell us a personal story that would help us get to know Jason Walton better.
Gosh, the first thing that always pops right into my head when people ask me personal stories is I was not thinking of running for office at all until 3 years ago. My wife and I have 3 children, and our oldest daughter, Jessica, took her own life. She did that in Provo, and it was devastating. And as our family, I'm LDS, that's my religion, not just so you know. And the reason that I tell you that is I had to call my only other daughter the last day of her mission and tell her your sister's gone on her way to the airport to come home. And I say that because it was a huge awakening from not just me but my whole family, where you pause and you say, that's great, we've had some success in business, and that's everything that's happened up to this point. What are you doing moving forward? What do we want to do as a family to make the country a better place and for my own kids? And I literally am afraid, in my opinion, that we're about to ruin our country from financial mismanagement and also from paying our enemies, paying them to come across our border. I literally got up off the couch because I'm terrified of where the country's going to be in 5 to 7 years. And I hope to have time to finish. There's a message of hope behind this. We're going to be okay. There's a plan. We're going to be okay. But I'm just saying that maybe some of you have had those experiences like that wake you up, and then I call it a checkpoint restart, where you refocus. And I am absolutely motivated with everything that I have, to go do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, to save this country and this state for my children and my grandchildren and for everyone else's.
Thank you for sharing that story. Can you give us 2 goals for your first year in office? What are 2 goals that you would have?
The first one might seem kind of silly, but, the first one's not silly. I want to elect new Senate leadership, and absolutely right out of the bat. Now, I know that if you've seen my ads, I came out hard against Mitch McConnell on the radio and on television. Even my own campaign said, you may want to do that. A lot of times he'll come at you and put $8-10 million against you. But that was my way of saying to you that I'm not afraid to do that, and I'm going to do the same thing in Washington. So that, I proved that when I did it here. So I went up against Mitch McConnell early. I went against him publicly, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go against anybody who I think is a public serpent. And I mean by that, you can't be a public servant and a public serpent at the same time. You can't do that. So if you're trading stocks on companies before your committee, you need to go home. In fact, if you're trading stocks at all, you need to go home. If you're not willing to wear your NASCAR jacket and show me where all your money is coming from, you need to go home. There needs to be full transparency in all of it. So the other thing is, it may sound a little strange, I want to get, I don't know if it's possible to do it in the first year. I want to get the REINS Act passed. And so, very excited about that. Something that both Senator Mike Lee and Senator Rand Paul are working on that I want to be a part of. And it just says that if these unelected, unconstitutional federal bureaucrats are passing, it's the wrong word, are instituting a regulation unconstitutionally against us, If it does more than $100 million of economic impact, which is all regulations, then it needs to go back and be voted on by the House and the Senate the way it always should have been.
Okay, quick question. When was the last time you were in a Walmart, Target, or Costco yourself and you bought something?
I was at Walmart last night, and I almost went there this afternoon, but I got a phone call, like literally in Beaver.
Okay.
I think it was Beaver or Cedar City when I pulled off the road.
Because I'm not sure when the last time Biden was, but I can tell you right now, my question is, you've seen the prices that we are paying right now. What would you do about inflation? What would you do about getting our budget under control?
Vote no. You have to vote no on spending bills, and you have to be resolute about that. Second thing, you got to stand up to this Marxist stuff that's like the Inflation Reduction Act. That's a lie. It's literally an act on how to increase inflation. You need to stop printing money and flooding it to the economy. And we need to do something about a Fed. Why do we have a private bank? Why do we have a private bank that's the Fed? It's ridiculous.
I'll let you wrap up.
So thank you for having me. Again, I'm Jason Walton. I'm fed up with it, just like the rest of Baby You. And I'm literally running for Congress, or for the United States Senate, because I aim to do something about it. I'm interviewing for a job. Ask for your help. Thank you.
Our next Senate candidate is former House Speaker Brad Wilson. And as you're coming up, Speaker, I'll ask you to grab a question here, and I will read it to you. And have a seat. Oh, this will be a good one. If you could sit down with Donald Trump for 2 minutes, what would you ask him?
Well, thank you, Lisa and the party, for putting this together. It's great to be here today, and great to be in Washington County. I absolutely love it here. And I love that question because I think it is so important this year that we fire Joe Biden and hire Donald Trump to be our president to fix all of the big problems that we have. And, you know, I think that if I were to visit with Donald Trump for just a few minutes, I would ask him, you know, what are the things that you want to do immediately after you get reelected president of the United States? And how could I help you? Because as the next U.S. Senator from Utah, we have got to get to a spot where Republicans back in Washington, D.C. are playing for the same team. We have seen for far too long that we're undermining ourselves in terms of getting a conservative agenda through Congress and working with the White House. We very likely this year are going to have Republicans with the Senate, the presidency, and hopefully the House of Representatives. What a great opportunity that is going to be for us to make the changes we need in this country. And, you know, can I just pontificate for a second longer?
Absolutely.
You're the boss, but...
Go ahead.
Okay, great.
Time.
You know, I've started this journey actually a year ago this week to run for the U.S. Senate. And I have traveled all across the state, and we have an amazing state with great people. And I've heard over and over from them, as I've talked to them around the state, a couple of themes. And one is, you know, people in Utah are proud of this state. They love this state. You saw today, for the 17th year in a row, we have the most positive economic outlook in the country. And what they've told me over and over again is, Brad, when you get back to Washington, could you make Washington look a little bit more like Utah? And I think what they mean when they say that, you know, when I was Speaker of the House, we were able to do some things that I think were historic for Utah. And when you think about hiring someone to do this job, hiring someone that you know is cut from the cloth that you're looking for makes a really big difference. So, for example, and you've heard some of this before, but to make Washington more like Utah, giving the biggest tax cuts in the history of the state of Utah, times a factor of 4 while I was Speaker of the House, so you can keep more money in your pockets. Doing something that was long overdue in this state, which was to protect your Second Amendment rights. It always frustrated me that we had to have a permit in our wallets to use our Second Amendment rights, and we finally got in this state constitutional carry. It was long overdue. And then, sure, you can clap for that. It's a good thing, right? Utah has something we put in place while I was Speaker, the strongest pro-life laws in America. And that is a reflection of who we are as a people, how we feel about family, how we feel about sanctity of life. And these things were not easy things to get done. These were things we had to fight for up at the legislature. And the list goes on, including taking 2 years, but keeping girls' sports in this state for girls. These things matter in Utah. And when we send someone to Washington, we've got to send someone back there that's going to fight for these values. While I was Speaker, we called the legislature into special session to make it illegal in Utah for our educators to indoctrinate our kids with this toxic curriculum of CRT and DEI. These are the kinds of things we've got to have people in Washington willing to go back and fight for. And in me, as your next U.S. Senator, if I have the good fortune to be there and do that, you know the ideology that I come from. All those things I just described and a lot more describe the conservative fighter that I have been my whole life and that I will be in Washington, D.C. There is a lot at stake when we're hiring someone back there. And to hire someone that's not been tested, that's not been through the fire, isn't the right thing to do, in my opinion. But hiring someone and electing someone that has been through the fire, that's been tested and trusted to uphold Utah's conservative values is, I think, what Utahns are looking for in this race.
Thank you, Speaker. So your first year in the Senate, what would be your 2 goals for the first year in the Senate? 2 goals.
Close the border and pass a balanced budget amendment.
So elaborate on both of those. How would you get those done?
Well, we've got, and you know, God willing, with President Trump, we closed the border with his help and Congress's help. But we need to build the wall. We need to put in place the Remain in Mexico policy. We need to give ICE and the Border Patrol the resources that they need to secure this country. Then it's going to take a decade, hopefully not that much, but it's going to take a long time to get those that are here illegally sent back to where they came from and have them come back the right way. And listen, the balanced budget amendment, it's really simple. We live in a time where we cannot trust Congress anymore to do the right thing for the right reason. We have to change the system and force Congress to balance the budget. I do not want my kids to inherit any more debt and have to pay that back than they already have. And enough talk about this. We've got to send people back there that understand the value of it. I didn't just balance the budget as Speaker of the House every year. I balanced the budget and provided record tax cuts at the same time. Having someone with that experience, that commitment back in Washington is going to serve our state well. And let me just mention one final thing. I want to get elected to Congress, or excuse me, the Senate, to do one thing. Represent Utah to Washington, not represent Washington to Utah. That's what this election is about. Thank you.
Our next Senate candidate is Josh Randall. Josh is coming to the stage right now. And Josh, as you're coming up here, I'm going to ask you to pick a question out of this bowl and then have a seat next to me. There's a microphone on the chair. And I will read the question for you.
Okay.
Okay, have a seat. Okay, when there's good and bad in a policy or a bill, how do you decide whether to vote or implement it?
That makes me think of the budget. And I will tell you, my commitment to you is that I will not vote for deficit spending. I'm not going to vote for continued resolutions. I'm not going to vote for, I'm a balanced budget candidate. So I would embrace a shutdown. I'll tell you something a little different about me than other candidates. I would push to overturn a 2019 law that pays furloughed federal employees. I'm a CPA. It's a little different outlook. But I think we've got to balance the budget by getting to a point where the shutdowns don't hurt us. When they don't hurt us financially, I would put in place a trigger law, 15 to 25% decrease in our discretionary. Boy, this is just all business, isn't it?
Go ahead.
I sound like a CPA. This is riveting, isn't it? Riveting?
You don't sound like an actuary.
No, but
so
really, I look at the balancing the budget as being a huge issue for our country. I'm running right now to help us with this. I'm confident that I can help us with this. 99 senators I have to knock on the doors of and persuade them to come to our side. I'm not going to compromise our core values. I don't think there's a candidate in this race that is more socially and fiscally conservative than I am. I really don't. But we have to persuade 99 other senators to get on board, which will take some miracles at times. But I believe in miracles, and we've got to have faith to do it. It's going to take a lot of work. 12 years straight of putting my whole soul into it. That's what I would commit to you.
All right.
Answer the question?
Great. We have a lot of materials from all of the candidates telling us about your qualifications. Can you tell us something, tell this audience here something of a personal nature, a personal story about yourself that would help us get to know Josh Randall better?
Sure. I'm persistent. I keep at it. I've been in oil and gas as an oil and gas accounting, revenue accounting manager. There have been layoffs. We've moved in the last 10 years. We've been in 5 different states, and we've bought 5 different houses. And I will tell you, I don't lose my faith. I don't get down about it. I keep at it. I told St. George last time I came down here that I went on 500 dates until I was 31 years old with 350 different women before I found my wife. I will tell you, I keep at it. I'm persistent. I will do everything. I'll give everything I have to persuade senators to do these things that will help save our country.
Only a CPA keeps track of that.
I know, right?
Okay. So can you tell us, when was the last time you personally shopped at a Walmart, a Target, or a Costco? Just
Costco, I don't have a membership. And the other one was Walmart.
Or Target.
And Target. Target's been probably 2 months.
Right.
I remember what we bought there, and Walmart is probably last week.
Okay, and
or
here's
grocery order today, or yesterday.
Here's where I'm going with that question. Seems like we have an administration that doesn't go shopping because we see the inflation that's going on in our budgets. What would you do if you were elected to the Senate to help get the inflation under control and get our you've talked about the budget, but how would we get inflation under control? How would we get the budget under control realistically?
Well, once we get to a point where we're not afraid of the shutdowns, we have to address what's going on with our Federal Reserve. Our Federal Reserve is adding to our money supply. So that's a problem. And I do have a unique qualification to look at this. I'll tell you, I've studied this out in depth. The Federal Reserve, our entitlement programs need to change. I have a plan to change our Social Security and Medicare. They're going to be privatized. I have a plan to move our Medicaid and our food stamps back to the states. I'm absolutely convinced that we have to take these steps. And when we do it, it's going to fuel production in this company. Everything I do in this country, in the Senate, is based on we have to get production up, federal spending and money supply under control. We will never tax our way out of unbridled spending. Never. It's got to be, and we got to practice what we preach. My wife would tell you I practice what I preach on this. A CPA with 6 kids under the age of 10, we practice what we preach. And we've got to have someone who does that. If you don't practice what you preach, you know, you're not going to persuade other people. So.
Okay, so as a CPA, realistically, how long would it take to balance the budget? Could you do it in one term?
It's going to take 60 or 70 years to pay off the national debt. That's what it's going to take us to do, realistically. Balancing the budget, we can do that almost immediately. And it is a combination of embracing a shutdown and persuading people quickly to make some changes. And I can tell you, I can work with Mike Lee to make those changes. There are people in the Senate who want to take these steps. They don't have a ton of financial. We got Ron Johnson as a CPA, and we got a CPA out of Wyoming. There are people who want to take the steps, but they need somebody on the Senate floor who is going to be able to help guide that conversation. But we can balance the budget very quickly, but we need to guide that conversation on the Senate floor, not just with people we hire. It is good to have somebody in the room who can help guide that conversation.
So in your opinion, who is the best president that we've had and why?
That's a tough question. I mean, I like various presidents. I think of Abraham Lincoln as being persistent, somebody who knew the certain things he stood for and kept at it. He ran for president, I think, 3 or 4 times. He came from, I want to say that he was adopted as a little child, or I can't remember. He came from some pretty tough circumstances. Skinny kid, kind of sickly, overcame a lot. I like Abraham Lincoln.
All right, so it's time for our closing, so we'll let you make a closing statement quickly.
I'm a convention-only candidate. I believe in it. I believe in you guys. I am certain that you can pick our next senator, April 27th. Thank you so much for being delegates. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. All right, our next candidate is Brian Jenkins. Oh, did we have a change? Yes. Okay, so our next candidate is Trent Staggs. And go ahead and grab a question there. And, you know, I'll have to refrain from old habits of calling you Mayor Staggs, but go ahead and have a seat there, Mayor.
Thank you. We're not going to correct you. Go ahead.
Okay. This is a little long.
Wow.
Can you provide examples of times when you have effectively resolved conflicts or reached consensus on a contentious issue in your professional or personal life?
Well, it happens all the time as a mayor. You know, I've been now 10, going on 11 years in office, so working with my city council to go ahead and advance the best interest of our community. It's something that I'm used to doing all the time. I think the larger question, or maybe the impetus behind that question is, I get asked this a lot on the campaign trail. It's, hey, how are you going to go back there and compromise and work, you know, across the aisle? And I've told folks from day one, look, I'm not going back to D.C. to make friends. I'm going to make change. I happen to know what time it is. I mean, we have a very short runway left, and we have to be able to get in there. And I'm not going to compromise whatsoever with any principle. And, you know, my definition of compromise is you and I have the same objective, but we have different means of attaining it. And unfortunately today, we have too many on the left that just don't have the same objective. They don't want to close the border. They don't want to go ahead and balance our budget. They want the regulatory state to continue to run amok. They want to weaponize agencies against citizens. And I'm not going to compromise with that. That's why I've signaled, you know, the endorsements that we have, and I'm going to go back there day one and work with the Senator Tommy Tuberville, with a Mike Lee, with a Rand Paul, with Kerry Lake, who's going to win. We're going to have about 18, we're going to take that from 18 to 25 plus in that executive steering committee in the Senate, and we're going to finally have a majority within our own caucus, not just people with R's next to their name.
Great. Well, this is kind of along the lines of that question, too. Can you tell us just something about you? You know, this audience here wants to get to know you. We've gotten all the flyers. We've received all those. We know what your resume looks like. Tell us something personal, a personal story about you that would help us get to know you better.
You know, I grew up in Orrin. I have 7 sisters and 2 brothers, so pretty big family. And my dad started out as a high school teacher and football coach. And so I tell people that story and that background. Kerry Lake, by the way, 7 sisters and 1 brother, and her dad started out as a high school teacher and football coach. And that's why we really kind of hit it off and said, well, we've got similar backgrounds. And I think why that's important is because my family, my parents raised me with the idea that, look, instilled a certain set of principles and values in me, and a belief in God and faith, but at the same time, that this country is a meritocracy. And if you can work hard, you can attain most anything. And so I've been in a situation throughout my life, I think, where I've always tried to exhibit that work ethic that was taught to me, and this is something where I think that fighter mentality, that's what comes out, you know, and that's what I've said. I think that's what really differentiates me from others, is the fact that I've always stood up to the establishment. I just don't care, right? We know what time it is. I got into this race in May. I was willing to challenge Mitt Romney. Anybody else who's in this race came in after September when Mitt said he wasn't seeking re-election. And I think that's important. I was willing to stand up and say, you know what? Enough is enough. We're going to go ahead and take this guy on. And we've done it time and time again as mayor.
Can you give us 2 goals for your first year in office?
Yeah. 2 goals. Well, first, we're going to balance the budget. We're going to get back to process, right? And we're going to secure the border. Those are the 2 things that we absolutely have to do. This country is really been driven to the brink by this managerial class and this bureaucracy. We've elected too many people that go back to D.C. that want to become part of the establishment, and that's why from day one I've said, look, I'm going to fight the establishment. And that's why, thank you. That's why I took on Mitt Romney. That's why I've always stood up, said no to COVID, lockdowns, mandates, you name it. As a mayor in my community, we've exhibited that fight all the time, and that's why I've signaled, the endorsements that I have. We're going to go back with President Trump, day one. We're going to get back to process. This is what Mike Lee calls the firm. This is horrible. It's unbecoming a self-governing nation, a constitutional republic, to have 4 people that go back behind a closed door, and they come back with this budget, $1.2, $1.3 trillion, and say, hey, you know what? You got 24 hours to go ahead and pass this, or the government's going to shut down, and it'll be your fault. No, no, no. Let it shut down. Let it shut down. Then we'll finally get this America First constitutional conservative core majority in the Senate that's going to say, all right, now we're going to get back to process. 12 appropriation subcommittees. Each one's going to have a budget. There'll be ample opportunity for debate and amendment. And we're going to get through that. That's what's going to save us. It's going to get us back to fiscal sanity. And then, of course, balancing or taking care of the border. Look, day one with President Trump, we're going to get this resolved with a Senate majority and a Republican majority in the House. Border wall, remain in Mexico policy, E-Verify, we have to have it, and get rid of, cut out any benefits to illegal immigrants. And we're going to see a huge, huge change.
So realistically, how long do you think it will take to balance the budget? Realistically.
To get us back to a fiscal year where we actually have a balanced budget, I mean, we could do it in one session if we have enough people with courage. We can absolutely do it. I mean, sadly, folks, we haven't had a balanced budget since 2001. It's horrible. In the last several years, it's been these continuing resolution omnibus spending bills. That's why my contract with Utah, if you guys have seen it, I've got 7 points on the contract for Utah, says I will not support an omnibus spending bill. Just won't do it.
And so, so you can balance the budget in that time frame, including paying that debt that we have. How long is it going to take us to pay that debt off? Balancing the budget might be easier. How long will it take us?
Well, sadly, it's going to be far too long.
Sorry.
Thank you, Washington County. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm sorry. And I apologize to the good mayor. I was listening to his answer and didn't see the time. All right, our next candidate has already joined us, Jeremy Friedbaum. Yeah. Have a seat. Well, I join you in having a little difficulty here tonight, so
good.
Getting around. I'm going to ask you to draw a question out of there.
That's not the scary part. This is the scary part.
That's right. Well, we'll make it easy on you. So I'll go ahead and read that.
Like Leonard Cohen says, I always liked it slow, so this is going to be difficult.
Well, this one's an easy one, I think.
Okay.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I don't know. So, I don't know where the Lord's going to take me in 5 years. I don't know if I'm going to win this race. I don't know if I'm going to get through the convention. I don't know. If I get elected as senator, I'll be serving the country.
Is that where you would like to be in 5 years? Tell us where you'd like to be in 5 years.
I don't know. I'm not doing this primarily because I want to be a senator, to have the power, to have the prestige. I got in at the last moment after Tim Ballard got politically assassinated. I didn't know what to do, and I prayed about it and woke up with this. And now what I'm trying to do is kill SB 54. No candidate has ever taken their standing from being voted on at the convention and used it to challenge SB 54. SB 54 was challenged by a group called Keep My Voice, but it was rejected at the Supreme Court because they didn't have standing. So I'm either trying to get elected at the convention so I can challenge SB 54, or maybe I'm getting other candidates to join with me. So I found about five convention-only candidates that if they get through, we will all challenge SB 54, because SB 54 has been terrible, especially in terms of dividing the vote. I see a horrible end to, I'm going to use a flip chart I just drew up. So you see, I hope you can't read that because I'm not supposed to mention any names, but there's a graph that represents about 40% of the primary vote. And because Democrats have been joining the Republican Party to have a say, they're going to vote, they're made up of never Trumpers, they're made up of Republicans in name only, and they're made up of Democrats that have crossed over. And if we divide it 6 ways, we're going to have at least 6 conservatives running in the primary. They're going to split the vote, and we're going to end up with the least conservative, which is what happened in the governor's race. Luckily, none of these people are here, so I don't have to worry about the names that are there. That's what happened. Well, there's a name again. But anyhow, that's my main concern, is that we get rid of SB 54. And I'm partially responsible for it occurring because I helped Mike Lee to get through the convention in 2010. He wouldn't be our senator if I hadn't found him 11. Well, I found about 50 votes. He missed getting knocked out only by 11. And it was a reaction to Mike Lee that SB 54 was created.
So I'm just curious, as a U.S. Senator, how would you get rid of SB 54?
You don't have to be a senator. All you have to do is be elected by you delegates at the convention. And then according to our rules, I should only have one other candidate. But then I'll end up having 5 or 6. And that gives me standing to challenge it to the Supreme Court and have SB 54 declared unconstitutional, because the legislators aren't going to declare it unconstitutional. For them, it's incumbency insurance.
So can you tell us a personal story from your life that would help this audience get to know you better?
Yeah, I had a picture with me of my grandfather.
Does it have a name on it?
No.
Okay.
That's a good one, though. No, so according to DNA, I'm 100% Jewish, Ancestry.com. And my grandfather was a world-renowned rabbi. When I was 20 years old, my parents rejected religion. I started as an atheist. And then I became a Christian when I was 20 years old. And 2.5 weeks later, I was praying for the Lord to help me be on Christ's team. And there was a knock on the door. It was the Mormon missionaries. And I got gathered quickly in the church, the LDS church, that is. And then what happened is I went home, and my grandfather said, well, I hear you become a Christian. Of course, you're wrong, but I'm not going to argue with you. You just have to publish a formal letter of recantation in the World Jewish Press. And if you don't, I'm going to disinherit you. I didn't even know I had an inheritance coming. But he let me know it was a little under $1 million. And my family would say Kaddish for me, which is the Jewish way of saying you're dead. So no one would talk to me. No one would answer my letters. No one would recognize me in the house. No one would take a phone call. My mother had decided to do this too. So I was dead to my family unless I wrote this letter. But I didn't. I came out to Utah and started my life anew. So I'm running against a lot of millionaires. It's good to make $1 million. It's good to show you have the capability of that. I don't think our problem in the U.S. Senate is the people that are there aren't rich enough. I think they lack integrity. So you might want to consider someone who turns down $1 million rather than make several.
You can sum up quickly. You have a little bit of time left, so.
I think that's fine. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we have another little change up. This is Chandler Tanner. Good to meet you.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you to take a question, pick a question out of that bowl, and hand it to me, and we'll ask you the question.
Looks like it's been a little rough in here.
It has.
Did you start the night with that brace?
Yes, I know I did not. But. Okay, so the question is, what motivates you to seek public office, and what do you hope to accomplish if elected?
Yeah, that's a super question. So I grew up in Emery County. If you know it, it's just 3.5 hours, go through Salina Canyon, get there. My grandpa was a coal miner in the area, Carbon in Emery County, and sadly, he suffered a terrible accident when he was in his late 20s, mine accident. A coworker took a smoke break without cleaning up properly and actually caught on fire, and my grandpa rushed to try to save him. They both together landed in a big pile of coal dust. My grandpa had burns over 75% of his body, third-degree burns. He survived, his coworker didn't. And so the one thing he said was, don't end up in the coal mines. Now, we have a lot of great people in the area who work in coal mines and serve a really important function there, and I admire them. But he said, go get all the education you can and get a good job with it. So from my little town of Orangeville, which I love and where I live again, I had the chance. I went to BYU and I graduated top of my class. From there, I went to Harvard Law School and got a law degree and a master's in history from Oxford. So I did what my grandpa said. I went and got all of the education I could. I worked in law for a couple of years in New York City. And then after a couple of years, as a lawyer, not to brag on any lawyers are very important. And in the Senate, obviously, making laws, it's a good background to have. But you're facilitating a lot of creation that others do, and I wanted to be part of creating myself. I had classmates from Harvard who went straight from law school to government. They kind of worked their way through there, but I didn't want to be part of that. I wanted to go out and have to do the real world experience of start something, create something of value. So about 10 years ago, I helped start a company that supports childhood literacy, because there's really not much that we can do that's better for our kids than to help them to be strong readers. I mean, that made a big difference for me, and it's very important, and especially with all the distractions they have these days. So I was able to start a company 10 years ago and enter politics, and I think this is really important. I didn't want to be in politics until I didn't need to be in politics. And for me, that's critical. It's not a career. I've had real-world experience. I've supplemented my, that good book smarts with street smarts, and I'm at a position now where I can go and serve without needing to prove anything to anyone, just going and being true to those values that I learned in a small town, with a grandpa who was a coal miner.
Great. And I got to tell you, I think lawyers are the best people in the world, personally.
So, I think a lot of people share that opinion.
So this audience here gets a lot of information from the different candidates, kind of their resumes, and you kind of went through your resume. Can you tell us a personal story about Tanner that would help this audience get to know you better?
Oh, yeah, I would love to. Well, it's tough. My parents kind of put me in a predicament. They named me Chandler Tanner, so no one ever knows whether it's my first name or my last name, but I'll respond to either. I've been called worse. So, I come from a great heritage. For those that are maybe familiar with the John Tanner line, he was an early member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, had 12 kids, and one of those was N. Eldon Tanner. So when I was at the BYU Business School getting my degree, the school is named after him, N. Eldon Tanner building. And the advice I got was, they said, "Oh, Tanner, are you connected to the Tanner line?" I said, "Yeah, I am." They said, "It's a good name, now go make it better." So that's what I want to do, is take up a good name and make it better by doing, for me, the American dream is to go from a small town with a grandfather who's a coal miner to be able to study and get the best education you can, and then to turn around and create something of value. The American dream, and what I think is at big risk, and which is why I'm really excited to be running, is put at risk when we rely on the government to solve our problems. This America's strength, and I saw this over in Europe. I think it's very helpful to be able to have that experience, to be at Oxford, to travel around Europe, because a lot of the liberal elites kind of point to some countries in Europe, like, well, what about these countries? Aren't they doing things better than us? And sometimes it can be a little bit intimidating. Well, I don't know. I've never been to Denmark. I've been to Denmark, and I saw it firsthand. And no, after traveling the world, I still think America has the right formula, which is the power is in the people, the power is not in the government, and the more that we let the government expand and do more and more for us, provide more security, it takes away our freedom. I mean, that's what Benjamin Franklin said. Anyone who will sacrifice freedom for security deserves neither. And so that's what I think is, I want to be responsible for me. I want you to be able to be responsible for you, because I think you can do a better job being responsible for you, then the government will, but that's the Democrats' approach is more and more, we'll do more and more for you so that we stay in power, and the more that we do for you, the more you rely on us, and it gives us job security, which I don't want. Personally, if 2 terms was enough for George Washington, 2 terms is enough for me. I'm not interested in doing this for a career. I want to go in, keep the government small, cut back, and keep the power with the American people.
Can you give us 2 goals for your first year in office?
Super, yeah. I'll give them 2 quick ones. I see so two laws that I want to highlight, 2 things that I'd like to do. A law to repeal and a law to pass. So right now, we see big problems with the executive orders expanding and expanding. They can't do it through Congress, and so they keep expanding the ability to do it through an executive order. So we've really got to cut that back down to where it needs to be. So that's one goal. The second goal that I hate to see is a rule that I make that doesn't apply to me and applies to you. And I'm sick of seeing Congress do that type of thing, whether it's with their retirement programs, whether it's with their investments. They just add complications that make it hard for the average person to do something. And so the second thing that I would love to do is to make it so that Congress doesn't get special privileges that aren't available to the average person.
We'll let you sum up with a closing right now for this.
Thanks so much for having me here. This has been terrific. I love running because again, it's not a career for me. The American dream worked for me to go from a small town, have great experiences. I want that to be there for my kids as well. And I think that it's with us the power to do it. Thank you.
Okay, so will we be joining Congressman Curtis online?
I can. Good to see you.
Thank you for joining us tonight. I've asked Lisa Sandberg to draw a question from the bowl for you, and she has. And now I'm going to ask.
Give me your best shot.
Okay.
Give me your best shot.
Here it comes.
By the way, hello to everybody. I'm in Washington, or I wish I could be with you tonight.
We thank you for being here. If you suddenly came into $1 million, what would you buy first?
A new truck.
Well, unless it's a truck that I don't know about, you have a few hundred thousand left.
And it would, by the way, it would not be an EV truck.
That's good to know. Well, Congressman, we've had other candidates here tonight, and we've asked them this question as well. And that is, we're getting a lot of information from all of the candidates with their resumes, so to speak, and on postcards and in text. Can you tell us a personal story, something that you'd like this audience here to know about you that would help them get to know John Curtis better?
Wow. A personal story that I would want them to know about me that would help them to get to know me better. I think this surprises most people that John Curtis is actually an introvert. That doesn't mean I don't enjoy being around people. I actually really enjoy it. But if there's some introverts in the audience, they'll know that we wear out quicker and we need our rest. And so maybe a little personal story about John is I always kind of set aside spaces where I can go and recharge my batteries. My family will tell you I've always had a part of the house where I can go, and that's where I recharge my batteries. And I genuinely love people, but the introvert part of me means that I got to get my breaks every once in a while.
Well, I'll say you are a true diplomat. You have the Y on one side and the U on the other. So I applaud that.
You like that?
And you're 50% right, so I like that. Can you give us two goals for your first year in office if you were elected senator?
actually, I've been thinking about this a lot. And let me tell you, this will sound strange because it may not be the type of goal that you're thinking of, but the number one goal for me would be to work in a proactive mode instead of reactive. And those of you that know a little bit about my life here in Congress, like I wish I could show you my schedule right now. Tomorrow morning, I go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, and it doesn't give you any time to plan. It doesn't give you any time to be thoughtful. And my number one goal, if I'm fortunate enough to go to the Senate, is to somehow carve out that time at the beginning of every week and the end of every week to move out of reactive mode into proactive mode so that we are making good use of time, that we're deciding what bills we sponsor versus the bills coming to us, we're going to them, that we're deciding where we're spending our time instead of it being driven by events. If a second goal would be to, I've really enjoyed the rural parts of my district. And if I'm fortunate enough to serve in the Senate, right now I have roughly a third of the geography of the state. And if I have the whole state, another goal would make sure every county sees me and knows that I care about them and I know what their individual issues are. And that would be a super high priority of mine.
You're probably aware, I've asked about our problems with inflation right now and our budgetary problems. You're in Congress, you see that every day. One of the questions I've asked everyone is when was the last time they went to a Walmart, Target, or Costco to find out if you're in there with the rest of us and see what's going on with inflation. What would you do if you were in the Senate to get inflation under control and to get our budget balanced?
Well, first of all, let me answer the first question is, like, I have a Costco like on the way home, and it is the most frustrating thing to me that I am so busy now. Like last night, it closes at 8:30, and at 8:29, it was a mile away. And so, like, I couldn't go buy my avocados, I couldn't buy my almond milk and all those things. So I do that, and am very well in tune. Here out in DC, I go grocery shopping once or twice or 3 times a week. So listen, to get it under control, when I was at BYU, they taught me 2 things about inflation. Inflation comes about because of too much money chasing too few goods. So here in the federal government, what are we doing? We're turning the faucet on. We're spending way too much money. Right now, President Biden is trying to relieve tens of billions of dollars of student debt. Well, listen, I have a lot of sympathy for these students, but that's just pouring tens of millions of dollars into the economy and either exasperating inflation more. And does that mean I have my time's almost up? Okay.
You have a minute, yes.
Okay, second part of that is that we've got to let up on the supply chain. We have too many restrictions on the supply chain. Both of those are federal issues for which we can do better. I thought she was giving me like a 10 for my score, like I had scored a 10.
Okay, and so in summary, we've got 30 seconds left. Let's give you the time to summarize. How about that?
Yeah, so listen, wish I could be there with you. I want you to know, since I filed in early January, I think I'm on my 6th trip down to your great county. It's been a lot of fun to get to know you better. I know your issues are very different, and I'll just make you this promise. If elected, I'll make your issues my issues, whether it's water or public lands, Northern Corridor, growth, all of those things. And I really look forward to working with you, and I hope I get that opportunity.
Congressman Curtis, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. Okay, I'm assuming we're back on schedule. Yes, we are, because I see our next candidate coming up, Carolyn Phippen. It's good to see you again. I'm going to ask you to grab a question out of here and hand it to me, and I'll read that to you. You can have a seat.
All right, I hear those are easy ones.
You picked the easiest question, I can guarantee you.
Okay.
Can get it open here. What qualities do you admire about the person currently in the position you're running for?
Okay, I did not get the easiest question here.
But I did not pick it. She picked it.
There you go. Okay, let's see. What do I admire?
You could pick one. It said qualities, but you're free to.
I know. Here's the thing. He has a good a seemingly very good and functional and happy family. Yeah. I'm also a mother of 5 boys. I hope my family's functional. No, it is. It is.
Okay. Well, we've all received mailings and texts that basically give the resumes of every candidate that's running. We're going to give you the opportunity now to let this audience get to know you better. Can you tell us a personal story about you that would help us get to know you better?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Yeah, get to know me. And do you want it non-political? I could go anywhere with
you
this.
can do, just keep it.
Okay. All right, I don't want to waste my time. Let's see. I will tell you, I so trust the Biden economy that about 1.5 years ago, I built a greenhouse and bought chickens. And literally, when I bought my chickens, I sent a picture to my boys. My oldest is 30. I'm a mother of 5 boys, right? So I sent a picture to my boys. There are no grandchildren, and I am bitter. Yes, I am bitter. And so I sent them all a text with a picture. I said, this is what happens to your mother when nobody brings her grandchildren. And it has made no difference in behavior. None. None. To be fair, only one was married at the time, so I'm grateful there weren't a bunch of boys with bringing me grandchildren, but a second one got married shortly after. He actually lives in St. George.
Good.
Yeah.
Can you tell us 2 goals that you have for your first year in office if you were elected to the Senate?
Number 1 is we have to deal with the border situation. I was down there 1 year ago with a number of people, including some of our elected officials from Utah and some just regular grassroots activists like me. And that is an untenable situation that puts us seriously at risk. I won't go into detail. I could talk forever. I don't know. I will just answer, and I can tell stories if you want. But and secondly, we have an administrative state that is running our nation. We have a constitutional system that we are not living under at all. And we have a federal government that is completely out of control and an executive branch that is equally out of control. And thank you. And so the work that I have done in politics has led me to a number of realizations. And I will say, I was home raising my boys for 20 years, and about the past 10 years, I've worked with some of our best elected officials in this state. I worked for the Utah House Majority and for Senator Mike Lee. And when I was working for Mike Lee, one of the big legislative issues that we were working on was called the REINS Act, R-E-I-N-S. A lot of people are talking about it now and ought to be and must be talking about it. REINS says that if you have these executive branch agencies, and I always say executive branch, hi Kevin, how did you show up down here? He's in Ogden. I love this guy. So he gets really great photos of me too, by the way, and no one can do that. I hate looking at pictures of myself. But I will say, we have an executive branch that is intertwined in every part of our lives. They create rules that have the ability to strip us of life, liberty, and property, and that is equal to law. I call them laws. I don't care if they are not laws, they are laws, right? And we were not constitutionally established to be this way. So REINS says if you have, and I always say when I talk about agencies, executive branch agencies, those are the only agencies we have, but I think it's important to hit that point home over and over and over again. This is the executive branch. The executive branch, does anybody remember, like, I don't know what year, 3rd or 4th grade civics? What is the role of the executive branch? Enforce the law. We have a wide open border, all kinds of crimes not actually being prosecuted by our federal government, and yet we have executive branch, enforce the law, agencies that are really busy promulgating rule that we have to live under. So REINS says if it does one of 3 things, here are the 2 biggies. If you have rule that either raises consumer prices, or, which is just about everything. I mean, thank you, EPA. We could shut them down really quickly. There'd be no need for them anymore. BLM. We could just go down the list. Department of Education. We could go one after the other. If you have an agency, or if you have a rule that raises consumer prices, or that has an impact on the U.S. economy that is greater than, and don't faint, $100 million a year, then it has to be voted on by those people we vote to represent us. So how about that? Number 1 priority. It's stuck in the Senate right now with Rand Paul. And look, I've worked on legislative issues where we can't go through the wall and solve them, so we go around it. Let's sit down, let's put a working group together. I did this on ESG in the state of Utah with Marlo Oaks in my group, thank you, as well as Attorney General Shawn and a number of elected officials and business people. How do we approach this issue creatively to effectively be able to tackle the problem from a bunch of different angles that won't give us like we're running into a wall like we are right now with rains? So
You've got 15 seconds left.
Oh my
We'll
gosh.
let you wrap it up with some closing statements.
You couldn't have like cheated and given me some extra time. I'm just kidding. I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative. I try not to cheat. No, I don't cheat. Anyway, I've told people the worst. Oh my gosh! There we go. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. We are to our last candidate, Brent Orrin Hatch. Good to see you again, too. Go ahead and grab a question out of here and give it to me. I'll read it. And hopefully you'll do better than the last candidate. At the question drawing, that's all I meant. Okay. Do you have a Some of us have experienced this.
Okay.
Do you have a family member with whom you disagree with politically? How do you handle that conflict?
Orrin Hatch. No, there's some truth to that. One of the great privileges in my life, frankly, is growing up with Orrin Hatch's oldest son. I followed his footsteps in becoming a lawyer, and now I'm following his footsteps doing this. But we didn't always agree on things. For those of you who've seen my resume and what have you, I've been involved pretty heavily in conservative things like the Federalist Society. I clerked for Bork, worked for President Reagan, great president. And so the nice thing I got to do was I would go on walks with my father almost every Sunday when he was in town. And I would have the opportunity to say, what were you thinking? And he was a smart guy, and he would be able to tell me exactly why he did the things he did. And quite often, it was because there was, early in his career, the Republicans had a majority, but they also had at least 4 Republicans that really voted with the Democrats. And so they had a majority, but not a majority. And so quite often, he was saving the country from crazy stuff that was going to happen otherwise. And so, but yeah, that would probably be my best answer for that.
Okay, you talked a little bit about some of your resume. We all have seen everybody's emails and flyers that tell us about their resume. Can you tell us something, a personal story about you that would help this audience get to know you better?
Okay. I'm going to tell you, if you don't mind, I'm going to tell you the least significant thing I did when I worked in the White House. Okay, instead of the most important thing, the least significant thing. Because I think it tells you a lot about me. I was sitting in my office one day and I got a call from Barbara Bush's chief of staff, and she was in a complete panic. And she said I need to come talk to you. We have a problem, and we talked to the president, and he said, Brent will be able to solve this for you. And I was honored, of course, and she showed up, and here was the problem. Barbara Bush had been called for jury duty in Texas. I actually had the highest security clearance in the White House counsel's office. This did not require that. And I said, well, what's the problem? She goes, well, this is going to be a nightmare. The press is going to be, they're going to be all over that court. We're going to have coordinating all the Secret Service and doing all the work to do this. It's just going to be horrible. What do we do? And I said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Well, what are you going to do? Don't worry, I'll take care of it. So I called the judge. And the first thing I could have done is just say, don't you know that this is the First Lady of the United States? You can't be doing this to her. I could have said, no, no, no. And no, I didn't think that was appropriate. I could have said, I've got this great endorsement. I got the President of the United States on my side. You can't do this. No, that wasn't right. So what did I do? I had this conversation. I said, Your Honor, You know this is going to cause a lot of dislocation in your courtroom. You're going to have the press all over. You're going to have Secret Service. It's going to be a real problem. It's maybe not fair to your court, to you, or to the people having in this trial. And he goes, yes, I understand that, but it's an important duty of all of us to be serve jury duty. And I go, I totally agree with you. And it was pretty clear he was pretty intent on this. And then it dawned on me. And I said to him, I said, Your Honor, let me ask you a question. If I had Barbara Bush send you a handwritten note that said it was a great honor of my life to be called for jury duty in your courtroom, and I, of course, will come and I'm excited to serve, and she signs that and sends that to you, what would you do? What do you think he said? I would immediately excuse her from jury duty. That's what I bring to this race. I bring, the president trusted me because he knew I'd figure out an answer. It was kind of a silly little thing, but I was known as someone who could figure out something by being smart, creative, and intuitive. And most of the issues, everybody's talking about border security and the Ukraine and the national debt. But 2 years from now, there are going to be some other issues. And you need to make sure you have somebody who is going to be able to represent you, who's going to be smart, creative, and intuitive and get things done.
Give us 2 goals for your first year in office.
I think my first goal is the craziness that happens because of Senate procedures. I know that because I've worked there, and we see that most in the budget negotiations where they do bills and they give you 24 hours to look at it. The reason they do that, and they're playing a game, is because they don't want you to see what kind of pork they're putting into those bills, and so you can attack it and you can keep it from happening. So I think one of the most important things isn't a particular piece of legislation, but it's the procedures to make sure it's fair, to make sure things are heard completely, and that we can protect our rights.
What would you do to get inflation under control? We're getting short on time. Inflation under control, get the budget balanced.
Well, that's the trillion-dollar question, right? The hard thing about doing that, of course, is one, you got to take spending back to pre-pandemic levels before Biden just made everything a mess. You then got to it starts getting hard because then you got to cut what you can. And there's not going to be a lot of that. And then instead of going to taxes or cutting entitlements, I think the next thing is to start cutting regulations. Do what Reagan did when I worked for Reagan. Remember, he had supply side economics. He cut taxes. He gave prosperity, and it made us have a better budget.
All right, we're on to the governor's race now, and we'll welcome Scott Robbins to the stage. If you'll just grab a question here, and then I'll read it to you. These are the softball questions to get you started. Have a seat right there.
How's it going, everyone?
All right, your question is, if you make it to the primary, what does your primary campaign look like?
Primary campaign just looks like traveling around the state, trying to, meeting with the different voters, also holding some virtual town halls so I can try and get everyone roped in. But, I think it's best when you can sit in front of people and they can ask you questions and let you know their concerns. And it's always a good time meeting everyone all over the state. We have a beautiful state with beautiful people and culture.
Indeed we do. So here's a question for you then. You're going to be housed up north, working up north. What will you do to acknowledge Utah's smaller counties if you get elected to this position?
Well, I would make sure that I'm available to everyone and that I'm making visits down here because really, I grew up in the suburbs of Salt Lake and Magna, so they did have some rodeos and everything, and I hunt and fish. And so I identify more with the smaller towns in the rural places. We have similar values. We like our land. We like family values. We like to hunt and fish, as I said. And so I want to make sure that they're included as well, not just people in the big city.
Very good. What are you looking for in a lieutenant governor?
in a lieutenant governor? It's a good question. I haven't thought about it yet, but somebody who shares the same values and same goals. For example, mine are to have nation-enriching immigration to benefit us instead of foreigners, a nation-enriching education, get all of this anti-white racial stuff out of our education system and all of the sexual degeneracy, and then racial harmony. You know, we all, I think the Republican Party does it better. We all live together. I mean, imagine if you were in the Democratic Party, just it'd all be how you can blame the white community for all the decisions that blacks and Latinos make. And to me, that just doesn't sound like how you should live life. We all have family and friends of different races and different cultures, and if we can get along, I don't see why all the institutions in the entire state can't. But basically just comes down to love your neighbor as yourself. If you wouldn't talk that way or do that to a black person, then why are you talking that way about a white person at our education institutions and even Tracy Aviary, the bird sanctuary in Salt Lake?
Very good. So the Utah governor is one of the highest paid governors in the nation. As of right now, they're just under about $200,000 a year. What would you do if elected to earn that taxpayer benefit?
Well, surprisingly, the governor, there's still some school admins that make over $300,000, which I think is a little interesting. But like I say, my background is I'm a Marine Corps artillery officer, and hoorah. And one thing you learn is that, well, pretty much the Marine Corps, they just throw you in there and they say, good luck, figure it out. And so that's the kind of environment I'm used to, and also highly competitive. And they expect you to get the job done. I mean, even if you got to wake up with only 2 hours of sleep, hike 15 miles with 60 pounds on your pack, and then sit down and accomplish the mission. I know that a lot of people depend on the governor to fight for them. Like, you all should be able to live your lives and not have to worry about politics. And that's why I chose to run for governor, because I feel like you always got to keep your eye on the current governor. And so I want you all to be able to just relax and enjoy your lives, and it should be the full-time politicians that are out there guarding your back, making sure you feel safe sending your kids to public school, making sure you feel safe in your neighborhoods, that someone's out here fighting for you, because that's the governor's full-time job. It's not your full-time job.
Very good. All right, so the Fed holds a lot of power over the state, highway systems, education. What would you do if elected to this position to maintain Utah's independence and self-reliance?
Well, I think it just comes down to your priorities. You know, my priorities are the people of Utah and what's going to benefit us the most. My priority is not to have this amount of growth every year in population or economy, etc. The main thing is the quality of life being better for the people of Utah? Are we bringing up the people who are in poverty and who are struggling up to the middle class? And I think having those priorities and making sure we're not just trying to sell ourselves out to get federal funds. For example, University of Utah and Weber State, they said they're both willing to become Hispanic serving institutes. How do you become a Hispanic serving institute? You have 25% Hispanic enrollment. What's the Hispanic population size in Utah? 15%. So how are they going to get 25? By discriminating against the white community. And so just so they can get a little bit more money. And Governor Cox, his office gave $2.5 million to Weber State so they could even graduate Latinos without having to learn English. And so, like I said, my priority are the people of Utah, and not just to sell myself out for federal dollars.
Very good. 15 seconds for closing remarks.
Like I said, I enjoy meeting with everyone, and I want to focus on a nation-enriching immigration, nation-enriching education, and racial harmony. And I hope to bring that same success of the Marine Corps to the Republican Party in Utah.
Thank you. All right, next up we'll welcome Carson Jorgensen. All right, Carson, on your way by, if you want to grab one of these questions, and I'll read it to you.
They warned me about these.
Because apparently they don't think you can read. I don't know.
I don't know.
All right. I still like my belt buckle better than yours, though.
I made this one now, so.
All right, here's your question, sir. What is your favorite plank of the Utah Republican Party platform and why?
You know, my favorite one in there is the part about education when it talks about the parents have the sole right to education, and that's what we believe.
So I'm going to kind of follow the same format where everybody gets the same questions. Lieutenant Governor, what are you looking for in a lieutenant governor?
No, absolutely. Somebody for lieutenant governor, we're absolutely looking for someone who believes in what they say and stands up for what is right no matter what the consequences are. That is something that I find very endearing and that we need in this country, because far too many are willing to compromise their values because the ends justify the means for them, and that's something that I tend to avoid to do. And so when looking for somebody, I want somebody who's honest. I want somebody who says what they mean and means what they say. I want them to stand up for what's right regardless of the consequences and stand for our elections and our fair elections that we have in the state, because they are over that. And election integrity is of the utmost importance, because if people don't have faith in their elections, they don't have faith in the system.
So you know, because you're from rural country, but up in Salt Lake, up in that area, you're going to be working. What will you do to acknowledge and support the smaller counties?
I mean, rural Utah has my heart. The reason I got involved into politics was because I saw the disproportionate things that were happening, that rural Utah was being ignored. And we have to have that, because we are all part of it. And as governor, you're not just elected to be a steward over the people. You're elected to be a steward over the land. And last I checked, most of the land resides outside of Salt Lake and Utah County. And so we must be a steward to the land and to the people.
Top three priorities.
Top three priorities. One is the spending. We have to get our spending under control, because as long as our spending continues the way that it is, we are indebted to the federal government. Right now, the federal government pays 1/3 of our bills here in the state of Utah. Everybody, when they talk about getting out from under the hand of the federal government, stop taking their money. And we can get to that point, because then it trickles down. Because number two is education. Education. You look at our primary education of our kids, the federal government, they make up about 9%. The things that are coming from the federal government are dangerous to our children. They do not promote Utah values, and we have to get them out of our public education. And three, we go back and forth on this. Growth is going to be huge. Water is going to be a huge one. And those are the two things, infrastructure, we have to focus on, because the growth is coming, whether we like it or not. But we're not ready for it. We're too busy spending $1 billion on baseball stadiums instead of putting it into our roads.
So you mentioned it, but the Fed holds a lot of power over the states, federal highway systems, education, and such. What would you do to help Utah remain independent and self-reliant?
Again, this comes back to spending. As long as we're taking that large amount of money, anytime we try to make a pushback against the federal government, they say, we're going to hold your money. And that is a place we have to get away from. We have to push for state control. Everybody wants our federal lands back, and I am the first one in line for that. But something we need to push for in the meantime is state control of the federal lands. We know what's best happening in our backyard, because when you lock people off of the land, you lock them from their true ability to create wealth, to grow our economy, and build things that have meaning.
How will you stay in touch with your constituency?
As everybody knows, as chairman, I was always available. If you needed to get a hold of me, I was there, and I'll continue to do that, because as you make yourself available, you can't be afraid to show your face. If you're making decisions that make you want to hide, you're probably making the wrong decisions. And you don't, here's the thing, you're never going to make everyone happy, but you have to own the decisions you make, and you have to be willing to stand up for what you've done and promote the reasons why. And if you can't sit down and have an honest discussion with your constituents about it and look them in the eye and say, this is why I did what I did, you're in the wrong business.
How many terms will you commit to?
2. We're going to try to get everything done in 1, but we all know that's not going to happen.
All right, so what will you do in your office to cut red tape and overregulation?
Yeah, Yeah. A big one for me, because this affects a lot of things. Housing, 40%, they did a study, it shows that 40% of the cost of housing can be attributed to overregulation. We talk about water. We don't have a water problem in this state. We have a water storage problem in this state, because right now in the mountains there are plenty of snow, but we're not storing what we own. You look at my little town. We have $15.1 million in a bank account, the land to build the reservoir, and to own the water to fill it. But we cannot cut the regulations. That needs to be first and foremost in our priority, to be able to cut those regulations to get things where they need to be.
So as the third piece of power, what will you do for your part to unify the two houses to move our state forward conservatively?
This is when it comes back to direction of leadership. We have to have that solid direction. We have to have a governor who's committed to going that direction, because when you talk about policies, for far too long we have drifted down the center of the road and wonder why we're getting the results we're getting. You have to set that clear and concise direction. You look at what DeSantis has done in Florida, look at what Abbott's done in Texas, and Noem's done in North Dakota. You look at Florida, it was purple. Now it's solidly red. It is no longer a swing state. And so that's where we're at right now. That's where we should be here in Utah. The rest of the West should be looking to Utah for leadership and setting that example going forward.
Closing remarks.
You know what? I got into this because I believe in all of you. I believe that our best days are still ahead. And I believe that we have a bright future for my daughters. And that's why I'm involved. That's why I'm here tonight. And I believe in you. And I want your families to have the same things that my family has had for all these years. We've been here 170 years. We don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon.
All right, we'll welcome Phil Lyman. All right, Mr. Lyman, your question is, what are you working on to improve yourself?
To improve myself? Well, that's an interesting question. I read a lot. I've got a lot of windshield time. And one of my favorite topics is Ron Paul and libertarianism, and I listen to a lot of that.
Okay, good enough. So if elected, what are you looking for in a lieutenant governor?
So I guess that it's what I'm looking for Utah in general. You know, it's great. First of all, it's great to be here in Washington County. You know, I used to refer to this as Dixie, and I think you were the Dixie Rebels. Are there still some Dixie Rebels here? I think now it's the Trailblazers or some. It reminds me of when I was a Cub Scout. I think it was a Blazer Scout. So no disparagement, but. You know, that's an example of how the federal government has these woke policies that work their way down through the state, down through the channels, that gets to the local level, and people are having bureaucrats make decisions for them that because they're the experts, they know more than the local people. And so whatever bothers me when I see that happen from the federal level, and I'll tell you, I spent some of the most important days of my life right here in Washington County, incarcerated in the Purgatory Correctional Facility because I took a stand against the federal government and their policies. So yeah, Washington County is kind of important to me. But so when I see the same thing happen at the legislative level, when I see the legislature come and pass bills that overrides local jurisdiction, that overrides municipalities, that really bothers me. So I want a lieutenant governor who believes in statehood, believes in parenthood, believes in personhood, and probably the number one thing for a lieutenant governor is someone who believes that the elections ought to be secured.
How will you hold yourself accountable to your constituency?
You know, people need to know that in America, we still have a Republican form of government. You're supposed to elect representatives, not leaders. You're not electing somebody to go and do make decisions for you. You're electing somebody who will represent your interests. I will sign a contract of the things that I will do as a governor. And I have great respect for the executive branch. I have great respect for the legislative branch. As a governor, the first thing that I want to do is tell the legislature, and I've told a number of them, the first bill I want to sign is a repeal of SB 54. I want to fix that. I want to get a Secretary of State put in place because it's really hard to audit the elections when the governor is over those elections. And I want to push the power of the legislature to the legislature. Right now we have an executive who aggressively organizes to draft legislation for the legislature. We get these bills from what they call the UEOC, the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission, which is made up of the governor, a bunch of executive level people, and they draft all this legislation, and then when it comes down, the legislature is supposed to pass that. That's not the way it's supposed to work. We've got a governor who's going around saying that he has done the biggest tax cuts in the history. Well, governors don't do that. That's not an executive function. That's a legislative function. So I respect the executive branch, and I will stay in my lane, and I will expect the legislature to stay in their lane and do their job.
How many terms will you commit to?
One. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't do a second one, but I will commit to one on the front end. If you're saying term limits, I think I would be happy if there was a 2-term limit for governors. But
sounds like a piece of legislation you should write. Just joking.
Yeah.
So the Fed, as you mentioned, holds a lot of power over the state, highway systems, education, and whatnot. What would you do to keep Utah independent and self-reliant?
If the state of Utah bends to every federal requirement that's passed down to us, are we a state? Or are we an administrative subunit of the federal government? I believe we're a state. And if we don't stand up and act like a state, then I guess we deserve what we get in that respect. So what we're seeing happen now on the southern border with Texas, God bless Texas, because they've looked at the Constitution and said if the federal government doesn't do their job under Article 4, then under Article 1, they can protect themselves against invasion. And whether it's an invasion of our southern borders or an invasion of our second-grade classrooms, states have not only the right, but the responsibility to stand up and stop those federal things. And if they don't do it, I say they're not a state.
Day one, top 3 priorities.
Well, I kind of mentioned those. SB 54 repeal, I think, is a top priority. Election integrity reform. We've got to do an audit of the elections, and then I would do a complete audit of the executive agencies and the branches and see where we could cut.
What will you do in your office to cut red tape and overregulation?
There's so much room to cut. In the state right now, as you look around, and it comes back to saying we're going to do an audit, we're going to do a quality control audit to see where the cuts could be made. There's things like the Utah State Tax Commission. I'm very familiar with them. I work with them as a CPA all the time, and I see the chance for some real efficiencies that could be put in there if we were willing to go and implement new processes, new controls. The other thing that you see with the state is a lot of siloed operations where the organizations are not really sharing information, they're not working together, they're not serving the people. There should be one place where the people could go, log in, take care of their car registration or take care of their state income tax payments or any of the other services that are available at the state. And I think that's something that could be done.
Got about 2 seconds for closing remarks.
I just am so grateful to be here, and I appreciate your support. Look forward to serving you as the governor. Thank you.
All right, we'll welcome Sylvia Fisk, I think. She's taking the long route. Welcome. If you'll grab a question out of this bowl and hand it to me, I'll read it to you. There you go. Just have a seat right over here. This is Sylvia Fisk. All right, Ms. Fisk, how do you plan to engage your constituents and ensure their voices are heard in the decision-making process?
I'll be doing exactly what I have been and giving my phone number out, call me, and I'm willing to listen. In fact, I like to listen more than I like to talk.
Well, that's going to make for a long part on my deal here. All right, well, let me ask you this. Once you get in as governor, how will you acknowledge and support the small counties that aren't right there around Utah County?
You know, we're all in this together. Small counties aren't small to me. They're just as significant as the big ones, and everyone is as important to me as the next person.
What are you looking for in a lieutenant governor?
Someone who will work hard, get up early, and tell the truth. I don't like our current government, how it is deceitful and lying. We have to start telling the truth, whether it hurts our feelings or not. Honesty is the best policy, and truth will always prevail. Always.
Okay. So as you know, the lieutenant governor has to be ratified by the nominating group. If they vote against or nominate against, do not accept your nomination, what would you do?
I'd better pick some new friends.
Kind of a tough one there. All right. So the Utah governor is paid just under $200,000 a year, which for governors is pretty high. How will you earn that taxpayer money in that position?
I don't even consider being paid. Serving my fellow man is the payment I want just in the service alone. I didn't even know how much the governor made. It wasn't a concern of mine. Money doesn't have that kind of meaning to me. Working hard every day, that's what will make an effective governor. Being concerned 24 hours a day. That's how I work. That's how I've always worked.
I'm going to give you my address on your way out so you know where to send the checks. What will you do for your part to unify the two houses to move our state forward in a conservative manner?
Well, you know, I don't put a letter next to anyone's name. I don't ask what party they are in. That doesn't concern me. We are all in this together. We are all citizens of this state. And I don't look at labels. I don't look at skin color. I don't want no titles or positions, because we're all hardworking citizens of this state. And so far, I have been involved in some committees in Salt Lake County that we are looking at land and water use, wildfire concerns, and the gondola. And I didn't even know that, for the most part, a lot of them were Democrats, because that doesn't concern me. I don't care what party you are in. We are all citizens of this state.
Very good. So as you know, the federal government holds a lot of power over the states with the federal highway system and education and things of the like. What would you do to make sure that Utah remains independent and self-reliant?
Well, we have to consider what it is, the purpose we want for the state. If the state can be energy independent, we need to aspire to that. But there are some considerations we have to remember. My ancestry goes back thousands of years in this area. And so I want to consider the value of certain areas and keep them sacred and honor them, because we are not the only people in this state. There are the Native Americans who we have to honor and regard that property also.
Day one, what would be your top 3 priorities?
Well, I'll be handing out a lot of pink slips. I have to have a staff that I can trust. I expect people to work with me that will have integrity. And like I said, telling the truth is very important. And I have been involved in watching this web of corruption in our government every day. And we have to have that ability to call out our elected officials because they work for us. And that's how I feel about it. I am working for the people.
Closing remarks.
Pardon me?
Closing remarks. You got about 30 seconds, 15 seconds.
I really love this area. My father retired from the Jordan School District and lived in St. George, and it's a beautiful area, and I appreciate this evening.
All right, let's welcome Derek Brown. Derek, as you pass by, pick a question and hand it back to me.
Oh, wait, I think I grabbed two. Oh, no, that is one.
Yep, you got one.
Okay, am I right here?
Yep, you're right there. All right, so we're on to Attorney General race.
And thank you for still being here. Thank you. I really appreciate that. We're all out there wondering, is there anyone going to be there?
Yes.
So I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
Good crowd. All right, question. How would your family describe you?
Ooh, is this my wife or my teenage daughter? Some days she described me as a mean parent. Other times, no, she's my little girl. I love her. They would describe me as musical and creative and right now, absent. That's part of running a campaign.
Yeah.
But I miss him.
Yes. Okay, so I don't know about everybody else, but I really would like to understand better exactly who does the Attorney General represent. I've been to a lot of events and I hear a lot of questions, and I don't think they really pertain to Attorney General. So talk to me about what does the Attorney General who or what does
Well, and just to be clear, the Attorney General is running effectively the largest law firm in the state of Utah. You have almost 300 attorneys. I've actually worked in two of the largest law firms in the country, but you are representing the people because you're elected by the people. I know some people have talked about whether we should appoint the Attorney General. It's not something that I support. I think it's a bad idea because if you're appointed by someone, then you're accountable to who? To that someone, exactly. And so I think you're accountable to the people. You represent the people ultimately as the Attorney General.
Okay, so if I have a problem, I'm going to come to you to be my lawyer.
Well, it depends what kind of problem. But yes, I mean, and one of the things I'd love to do, I used to work with Senator Mike Lee, and in Senator Lee's office, we have a pretty robust constituent services program. Have any of you ever called and asked questions or asked for help? I mean, they deal with everything from immigration to passport issues. One of the things I'd love to see the AG's office do is have a constituent services program like the one that I actually managed in his office that would, I mean, depending on your legal question, then if you came to the Attorney General's office, they would either direct you to whatever the agency is or file a claim on your behalf or on behalf of the state.
Okay, so maybe I've been wrong in my understanding because I thought the Attorney General represented the state, the legislature, the governor.
There are some areas where statutorily they do.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, very good. Okay, many of us, no, let me stop and ask this one first. Tell us about the craziest case you've ever been a part of.
Oh, that's a great question. I was part of an antitrust case involving oil drilling, and it had been going on for 11 years at the time that I was involved. And it got more and more crazy, and I believe it went on for even 5 or 6 years after I was no longer at the law firm. Antitrust cases are notoriously just crazy and wacky.
Okay. Let's see. Many of us are concerned about the high-profile attention the AG's office has had. What will your media presence be?
Well, so I served, as you know, I was the chairman of the state Republican Party, and My focus was always the party. What is good for the party? And in fact, I got a lot of media requests from CNN, MSNBC, some of those other national places. And before I would ever agree to do one of those interviews, I would always think to myself, does this actually benefit the party? Is this good for the party? And most of the time, the answer was no. I mean, maybe it would have benefited me for some reason, but it wouldn't benefit the party. And so I would say no, and it was only occasionally when I would do them. But I think that from a media standpoint, the Attorney General should be pushing out what it is that they're doing. And when you win cases, you should be out there. People should know that you're winning cases, but it shouldn't be something where you're just sort of gratuitously out there all the time. And so my approach of looking at the party and saying, okay, is this good for the party, is the approach that I would take as Attorney General. And I'd stop and say, is this good for the state? Is this good for the office? And then adjust accordingly, because ultimately that's what it comes down to.
So what if the legislature assigns you a case and you don't like it or don't want to do it?
And by assign, you mean you have to defend a law that they have passed.
Yes, or yeah.
So ultimately, I mean, the reality is the Attorney General is accountable to the rule of law. I mean, first and foremost, it's the rule of law. Even if there's a case that or a law that you don't necessarily like, you still defend it. In fact, about 20 or 25 years ago, we had an Attorney General. Some of you may remember Jan Graham, the last time we had a Democrat. And there was this spat between her and the governor because she did not want to defend the state's abortion law. And the governor insisted that she do that, and she said, I'm not going to do it. And he ended up basically hiring counsel of his own to defend the state. And so ultimately, you don't stop and go, do I like this law? Do I not like that law? You defend the law.
So what's the difference between an Attorney General and a lawyer?
Well, the Attorney General is running. It's a policy position, it's a leadership position, it's a vision position, it's a position where you are managing almost 300 lawyers who have an expertise in virtually every conceivable aspect of the law. And so that's what it is. I mean, it's really, I mean, you've got to have that legal background like I do, but you're fundamentally setting an agenda for the office.
Okay. We're at about 15 seconds to finish up. What would you like to
I would just like to say I'm running because Utah, I believe, is a separate and independent sovereign, and ultimately on issues of federal overreach, which is something that's really near and dear to my heart, having worked with Senator Lee, I believe we need to act like it. And that's one of the reasons Senator Lee supports me. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're gonna go this way. Okay. Coming to the stage is Trent Christensen. All right, Trent, as you come this way, you can come in front, pick a question, hand it back to me. There you go. All right, and then you can have a seat. All right, Trent. All right, what book are you currently reading?
There's a book called, well, actually, I'm one of those people that has like a stack of books, and I've read like 10 pages in each of them, and I stop and I have to read the next one.
Yes.
Now I'm going to forget the title. Miracles, the book on miracles. Where's Diana? It's a book on, A Course on Miracles. That's what it's called. It's A Course on Miracles. It's a book about how to bring miracles in your life and how to understand them and appreciate them and be grateful for them. And I figured this would be a good time to learn about miracles, right, in this election. So, yeah.
So what have you gleaned from it?
That miracles happen every day. We just don't know it. And if we can really be grateful for the ones that we have, more will happen. And it's not that they're not happening. We're just not open to it. Our eyes aren't open to it. And we see it every single day. We see it in our kids. We see it in the miracles happening around us in our country. You know, we're still a free country. That's a miracle, right? And we need people that can keep it that way. And that's why I'm running.
So what miracle have you seen on the campaign trail?
You know, a lot of things that have really impressed me and made me excited. I'll give you an example. In Summit County, we went to their county convention, and I have a speech. I give a speech. I talk about the same things in every speech: election integrity, supporting law enforcement, securing our border. And I got to Summit County, and I was like, okay, this is Park City. I'm not sure how they're going to take this. And I gave the speech, And they just erupted. They were so excited. People were cheering and yelling and excited, right? Same thing in Wasatch County. And that to me is encouraging. That's a miracle that the word is getting out. This is our country. We need to protect it. There's people that are willing to do it and are willing to put their lives on the line to do it and to fight for our liberties. And people across the state, I think are really, I'm encouraged by how many people are really hearing that and willing to support candidates that want that.
What, I like this question. I'm asking every one of you this one.
Good,
Tell
okay.
us about the craziest case you've been a part of.
Craziest case. I'll tell you a crazy case. So the first case I ever took to trial, okay? I was a brand new lawyer. I thought I was special. It was a pro bono case. My ecclesiastical leader had brought me a couple and said, will you please talk to them? And I said, okay. And they had had their 2 children, 9 and 11, taken from their home at gunpoint by the state based on an accusation, a false accusation of a former disgruntled employee. And I looked at the facts. I said, okay, I'm going to take your case. And I showed up to the first hearing in a very nice suit because I was brand new, right? A little nervous. And the state attorney went like this and threw a motion at me. And I picked it up. It was a 24-page motion. He'd never met me before. And it was a 24-page motion for sanctions against me, the attorney. And what they were trying to do is, I was a brand new attorney, right? They were trying to scare me. Get out of here, kid. You don't belong. What are you doing here trying to protect their individual rights? We're the state. So obviously I was there. I won. I beat the motion. I won the hearing. But it took me 8 months to get those kids out of foster care and back to those parents and protect their parental rights. Thank you. But what I found is 8 months that's average. That's how long it takes to fight the state. And that's part of why I'm running, is that if you've never fought the state, it's hard to understand the true power and resources that the state brings against you. And that's why I'm running. It's because I'm someone that wants to fight the state to protect your individual rights, even against the power of my own office as Attorney General if necessary. That's the Attorney General's mindset that you need to have, someone that's going to fight for your rights before the agenda of the state or any particular politician's agenda.
So what does your first day look like?
Did you say my first date?
Day.
Oh, I was like,
First day in office.
Okay. Things got weird. Okay, no, I'm sorry. My first day, on day 1, we start a full statewide transparent audit of Utah's electoral system. We look at all of it. We look at the ballots. We look at the mail-in ballots. We look at the machines. We put the county clerks under oath. We talk to their staff. We audit the company that's supposed to be cleaning our voter rolls but isn't. We do all of it, and we start on day 1. And we start on day 1 because that isn't a 2-month fight. That's a 4-year fight. That's an 8-year fight. If it's longer than that, someone else is going to have to do it because I'm doing 2 terms, only 8 years. But that's what has to be on day 1. And on day 1, we're going to go to war. And here's why I say that. The primary is on June 25th. And I was meeting with the Fraternal Order of Police, and I said to them, look, on June 26th, when I win the primary, I'm coming back to this table, and you and I are sitting down, and we're building a strategy on how we're going to keep fentanyl out of this state. We're going to work together for a change. We're going to build a strategy on how we're keeping illegal immigrants out of this state. We're going to do it for 7 months so that when I take office in January, we go to war.
Many of us are concerned about the high-profile attention of the that the AG's office has had. So what will your media presence be?
Well, here's the answer to that question. The bully pulpit is a real thing, and it's a powerful thing. So it's something that the Attorney General needs to use, but be smart about, right? If I'm going to the public and I'm saying there is a law that has to change, I've heard other candidates in this race say, I'm going to enforce all the election integrity laws. Well, guess what? The election integrity laws that we have right now are the problem. Okay? So they need to change. But what I need to do is go to the people and say, look, here's the results of the audit I just mentioned. Now you and I are going to go to the legislature and we're going to make a change. And so the media presence needs to be, it needs to be principled. It needs to be issue focused, right? So when I come out with the data and I can prove, look, these things aren't working, we need to change it, my media presence is going to be on those issues and how we fix them, how we get fentanyl out of the state, how we keep illegal immigrants out of the state. I don't want to be on Skinwalker Ranch, and I'm not going to go to Qatar, right? So my media presence that way will be different. My media presence will be, this is how we fix the state.
So okay, we're going to be 30 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and let you summarize and tell us why our body should nominate you.
I appreciate that. I'm running for one reason. I don't want to be governor. I don't want to be senator. I'm running for AG, and I'm going to do it for 8 years. I'm going to do it because my youngest is 12, and in 8 years he'll be 20. He'll have left the house. I'll have helped fix the state, and I feel like my job is done. But I will not allow them to grow up in a state that is a sanctuary state. I will not allow them to grow up in a state that becomes California in 5 years. I will not allow them to grow up in a state where the federal government can take our rights and take our lands with impunity, and nobody stands up to them. That's why I'm running, and that's why I want to be your next AG.
Rachel Terry's coming. Oh, here she comes. Okay, Rachel Terry is our next candidate coming to the stage. All right, Rachel, you're going to choose a question, hand it back to me.
Do I get to read it?
Nope. I'm going to read it to you, so you don't get time to think about it. All right, let's see which one you drew. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
Is this where I get to say I work too hard, I care too much, and love too deeply? That's a good question. I wish that I were a little bit more of a creative soul. My 13-year-old daughter, she loves the creative arts. She is awesome at it. She taught herself how to crochet, how to embroider, and I walk into a Hobby Lobby and have a panic attack, like literally a panic attack. It's horrible. And I've told her, I said, look, Avery, I can't do everything for you, but what I can do is put people in your path who will help you develop the best parts of you. And I've been so lucky in my career to have that exact same thing. So I've been a practicing attorney for 20 years. I started my career at a law firm. It's called Fabian and Van Cott, great firm. And I developed a lot of skills. I worked with some really smart people in real estate and litigation. And then I got to go to the Board of Education. And I learned about where I got to prosecute educator misconduct. So when teachers would do bad things, we'd prosecute and take away their license. One of the things I learned there was a lot of dirty words, and I would like to forget those. So that's unfortunate. I feel like I should get up and like walk around. I'm sorry. So that was fun. Let's do that again. So when I worked for the Attorney General's office, I had some people there who were incredible lawyers, who were incredibly passionate about the work. They had all left, fancy law firms like me because they cared about the work. And those people deeply impacted me. And there were times when they said, Rachel, you got to shine your shoes, which meant you can't just focus on the big things. You got to sit down and work on the little things. And that has had a profound impact on how I practice law, how I lead my organization at the state. Because we focus on the big things, and I'm proud of the big things we're doing. I'm currently the director of the Utah Division of Risk Management. And unless you're a public employee, you probably haven't heard about it. We insure the state, all the school districts, and all the universities. So when you see a case about sexual assault or a building that gets flooded, or my favorite that I worked on a couple weeks ago was a research freezer full of eyeballs, 100% true. It melted, it went out. And if you're wondering what happens with melted eyeballs, we can talk about this after. And if you want to know how much they're worth, it's about $1.5 million. And I've applied these leadership principles and legal principles to my current work. And the work that we do at Risk Management and the work the Attorney General's office does, it is hard and it's heavy and it's emotional, because when you're dealing with a child who died in an accident, when you're dealing with someone who is sexually assaulted on campus, when you're dealing with the loss of life and property, you carry that weight, because as an attorney, as a practicing attorney, I know that how I represent that client will change their life. And when you work at the Attorney General's office, you know that how you represent the client and the state will not just change that client's life, but will change the entire landscape for the state. And one particular case that sat home with me was, there was one of these sexual assault cases. And we ultimately settled it because it was what was right for the university, it was what was right for the woman who'd been harmed. But we didn't just write her a check and walk away. We worked together and we changed policies that made the state better, that made that campus safer. And that's why I love the work. It's because it's never about that one case. It's never about that one person. It's about what is the broader principle, the greater good. And I get to do that in my work every day. And it's the reason why I want to run, it's why I'm here. Because I love it. I have a ton of energy for it. And I love the people we're doing it for, and I love the people I do it with. They're incredible lawyers. There's a few duds here and there, but by and large, these are people who love the work. The other reason is, I told my husband, for those of you who've been to my other campaign events, you've heard this joke, but laugh with me anyway, because I could use it. I sat in that room for a long time. When we were talking about this is a family decision. My kids spent spring break going to campaign events with me. They're awesome, boy-girl twins, Cole and Avery, best kids ever. And so when I was telling my husband I wanted to do this, I said, let me sell this to you. I said, I'm going to apply for the super cool job, and it pays exactly what I make right now. But I'm going to have to spend a ton of money to get this job. And while I'm trying to get it, and when I get it, people are going to be really mean to us. He said, that's awesome. He said, that's awesome. And I said, will it make you feel better if they'll judge everything about our personal lives? He said, even better. I said, will it make it even better if, like, they make up stuff about us? He said, I'm all in. And it's been an amazing journey. You're the best delegates I could ever hope to engage with. You ask me hard questions. You share your sad stories with me. You look me in the eye and you tell me about what's important to you. And what's important to you is what's important to me. And this is why I want to be the Attorney General. I will be the most transparent, the most accessible, the most responsive, and the hardest working attorney you've ever had represent you. And I will make you proud every single day that you voted for me. So thank you for putting this on. Thank you for being patient. And waiting all this time. You've been a great audience. Tip your waitresses. Thank you.
All right. All right, Frank, are you there?
I am.
Okay, perfect. All right, so next up is Frank Mylar, and we're going to have Jean draw us a question. All right, so first off, Frank, if you could have lunch with one person, alive or dead, who would it be?
Oh, wow. I presume Jesus Christ is not one that I could use, but if it was, I would.
Of course you could.
But obviously, that is the person I'm most passionate about in my life. I actually started reading the Bible through when I was in 9th grade, and nobody told me to, no one asked me to. I didn't even go up in a very good home, but it honestly rooted me amazingly for everything I do in life. And I'm very busy right now because I have a 2-week trial in federal court, and that's why I'm not there. I'm sorry. But it's literally, I was reminded again this weekend, I've just got to trust God, because I'm like busy as can be full time, but I'm also trying to campaign.
Very good. All right, so I've got some other questions. We'll just kind of let you direct it, but we'll go through a few. So what is the craziest case you've been a part of?
Wow, the craziest? I've had a lot of them. I don't know what you mean by craziest, but I did have some difficult cases. I actually represented a woman who had left a lesbian relationship, and actually she became a Christian in my office. Her former partner decided to sue her for custody. We had a district court judge who was actually put on the bench years ago, and he created rights in this partner, even though there was not marriage. This was before there was gay marriage at all. And just invented these rights. We then went through a terrible time of fighting things, and then pretty soon there was contempt. We went up on appeal, but the Court of Appeals wasn't doing anything about it. Finally got to the Utah Supreme Court, and they were going to wait until we actually filed a case. Meanwhile, she came to the point, my client, she had moved to San Antonio, Texas, says, I can't do this anymore. This is terrible for my child. I am not going to do this. So I actually had to call the Attorney General from Texas. This was years ago, 2007, and actually see, and I was able to see that he would not extradite her back to Utah for contempt because the Utah Supreme Court had not given a final ruling. So they would not enforce the contempt in the lower court. When we won on appeal, it was a grand slam home run because they agreed with my first argument that there was simply no jurisdiction, that a parent has the primary rights to their child, and unless you can show abuse or neglect in an adjudicated proceeding. So that was a very strong statement for parental rights. It was a very long road to get there.
Wow. Oh, we live in such a different world, don't we?
Yes.
So let me see. Tell me, you are currently a prosecuting attorney. So if you become the AG, how does that look different than what you're doing now?
Well, that's interesting. I haven't prosecuted for several years, so I'm not sure where the facts came on that. I have prosecuted criminals, but it was when I was in the Attorney General's office years ago. And so I haven't prosecuted recently, but I actually do a lot of civil cases like the AG's office does. I represent sheriffs, including Washington County Sheriff. I've successfully defended them several times and never lost a case down there. In fact, I still have a Fourth Amendment case that I'm dealing with in there. So actually, I go to the Sheriff's Association meetings and things like that. But I do the bulk of what I do is actually civil litigation right now.
Oh, sorry for making presumptions that because
No
you're
problem.
going into case tomorrow, and for some reason I assumed that meant prosecuting. Okay, so tell us how you've been an attorney for quite a long time. How does that look different to you from being the attorney versus attorney general?
Sure. A lot of ways I've acted like an attorney general. That is, I go down to the legislature, which attorney generals actually should, and fight against bad bills and for good bills. I've also represented the Highway Patrol Association when their memorial crosses were threatened by the American Atheists, which is, again, an attorney general type of thing. I did that in private practice. There's a lot of things like that I do. During COVID, the AG was completely silent, but actually people called me all the time. They said, hey, can our church meet? Hey, can our Christian school meet? I also I work with Alliance Defending Freedom, and they actually called me up and said, Frank, can you help people get religious exemptions to the COVID vaccine? And I was happy to do it. And again, almost all these things, I don't charge a dime for them. And by God's grace, everyone I helped with a religious exemption was able to get it, including my daughter, who was actually a nurse at Primary Children's Hospital.
Awesome. Okay, so how does managing the office look different? Have you had management experience, and how does that look?
Yes. I have actually managed attorneys in the AG's office and paralegals, as well as attorneys and paralegals outside. I've had my own law firm for a couple of years. I'm also manage attorneys sometimes when I'm working with other attorneys in different cases. And so this is something that I do. I also have a master's in business administration, and I know a lot about management. I'm going to go around the office and actually manage the attorneys because most of the attorney generals, I'm sorry, they act like figureheads, and I work for 3 different attorney generals. So this is something I'm passionate about. I really want to continue to fight for constitutional rights, and I'll be in a better position to do so as the Attorney General.
All right, that's your time. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Good luck
Thank
tomorrow.
You. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
We're being joined by Tina Cannon, who is running for state auditor. You just grab a question and have it say, I'll read it to you. Okay, thank you. Go ahead and see.
Thank you, everyone, for making it clear to the end, to the most important race. Appreciate that.
Oh, I think you picked the longest question.
Oh, boy.
The Utah Oath of Office says, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Utah, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity. What does this mean to you?
That means that I promise to uphold the Constitution, and not just the Constitution of the United States, but also the Constitution of Utah. So it's important to know what those two documents say and what they mean. And I've spent my life, I grew up in a family where we talked politics around the dinner table, so I'm a little bit of a nerd on that. I know what both of them say, I know what both of them mean, and I feel it in my heart.
Great, thank you. Can you tell us all a little bit about what in your background has prepared you to be a state auditor?
Well, I've spent my life in accounting, and I'm one of those people where numbers speak to me and spreadsheets sing. So I'm a nerd that way. But I have my management degree, or accounting degree with a management emphasis from Utah State University. And I've spent 28 years. I've opened 2 different CPA firms, and when I went into retirement, I got to know the state auditor. He reached out and asked me to work for him. And so I've been in the office for the last 2 years. I know what we do, I know why we do it, I know how we do it, and I know who does it. So I'm very prepared to take on the role.
That sounds like you're ready for my next question then. What would be your top 2 priorities if you were elected?
So we lead the nation in data analytics in the state auditor's office. Typically in accounting, when you do an audit, you would spot check, you would do a sampling, a random sample. But because we collect all of the financial transactions for all of the agencies that we audit, we have the full data set, and we can, through data analytics and AI, we are able to analyze those, find the outliers, and start an audit there. So improving that capability, improving the Transparent Utah website. If you haven't been out there, you should go out and look at it. We take all of those transactions, we put them all together and put it in a searchable format for you to be able to use so that you can keep government transparent as well.
Thank you. Oftentimes, governing involves negotiation and convincing people to see something differently. Can you tell us about a time you convinced someone to change their mind?
See, governing is like that. Auditing is a little bit not so much that way, but we'll leave that for another day. But I've been married for 30 years to the same man, and we have 4 children. So there's been a lot of negotiation, a lot of changing minds in those 30 years. But probably the biggest thing I got him to do was to convince him to marry me in the first place, and I've been lucky ever since.
Thank you.
Thanks. He's in the back. You can congratulate him later.
Can you tell us how you would engage with your constituents, particularly in rural Utah?
Oh, yes. So this is one of the changes I want to make in the office. We publish every single audit report that we do, but most of you don't know where they're at or what they say. And without, it doesn't really mean anything if you do a report and it just sits there, and we're dependent on sometimes press that doesn't want to necessarily embarrass anyone. So I would like to start giving people the opportunity to sign up for a newsletter so you can find out more of what we're doing, what the audit reports say, and get a notification if an entity that you're following or you have a special connection to, maybe a school district, maybe your county or your city, has an audit report come out, that you would be able to get the notification with the link for where you could find that information.
Great, thank you. You are, I believe, the state chair of the National Term Limits.
I am.
Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yes, they reach out to me. This is a national organization that stands for term limits in Congress. So it is an effort to put enough pressure on Congress that they will actually pass the rule to limit themselves. In order to do that, we need to have 30 states that are starting to move in that direction. So they asked me to represent it here in Utah. We collect, every time someone runs for office, we reach out and ask them how they feel about national term limits, and we have them sign the pledge to support the legislation.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things I noticed on your website is that you say you are an advocate for taxpayers. What does that advocacy mean to you?
So one of the important things about what we audit is we audit government. We don't audit individuals. And I've spent my life working with individuals, telling them how much money they have to send, state, federal, local government. So I've been their advocate. I've represented taxpayers in all sorts of audits. But what that means for you is I know whose money we have. I know who we took it from, and more importantly, I know how it would be used if we left it where it was. So I am passionate that we use your money wisely, that we protect it, and that we do our best to make sure government follows the rules too. You have to follow the rules. Government should follow it as well.
You served as a parent advocate for the Utah Parent Center. Will you tell us a little more about that?
I have 2 kids on the autism spectrum, and as most parents do, you enter a new world of new acronyms and new circumstances. So as I worked with the Utah Parent Center and started to learn more and more about what it meant, what an IEP was, what a 504 plan was, I realized that I could do a lot helping other people navigate through the same thing. So I went through all the training, all of the legal training, advocacy, how to negotiate, that's another one for the negotiation, and represent parents as they go through a difficult situation with the school district, and how to advocate for your children. So I spent a couple of years learning how to do it, and then several years advocating for parents and working for parents.
You have just a few seconds left. Anything else you'd like to tell us?
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I really do appreciate you staying clear to the end, and I would love to have your support on April 27th.
Ricky Hatch is joining us now. You'll just grab a question and give it to me. I'll read it to you. Thank you. I really should have brought glasses.
I have some if you need. Readers.
What is the strongest of your skill sets that qualifies you for this position? What sets you apart in this field of candidates?
Wow. You'd think I'd paid her for this.
It's a good opening.
My strongest skill set is that I'm an auditor. I've been an auditor for over 3 decades. I've been a CPA for 26 years. And I think for the Office of State Auditor, you want an auditor. You want someone who understands and thinks like an auditor. The CPA code of ethics is baked into my DNA. That's just how I think. I plan Thanksgiving dinner with a spreadsheet. You know, I balance my family's checkbook every day. It's just, I love that. And saving money makes me giddy. It's fantastic. So I'd say what sets me apart is I'm the only candidate that's an auditor. I'm the only candidate that's a CPA. And for state auditor, I think you should have an auditor.
Thank you. What would be your top 2 priorities if you were elected?
Ooh, fantastic. Top 2. First one deals with these kind of quasi-governmental entities. I'm talking about MIDA, the military installation, Inland Port, and the new ballpark, which I know is a favorite topic down here, right? These are kind of quasi-government entities that don't necessarily have to follow all of the state rules. And my thought is, if you're taking taxpayer dollars, you got to follow the rules that all the other entities have to follow. And thank you. And so I think we should take a look at those and see why they're not doing it. And if it's statutorily required or not required of them, let's fix the statute. The second thing I would do is focus on the local governmental entities. These entities, there are 1,800 of these local governmental entities throughout the state. Counties, cities, special districts. And state auditor's office is required to help them provide consistent financial reporting. But most of these entities are so small, they don't even have a full-time employee, let alone an accountant. So that office is charged by statute to help them. And they have 3 people in that office. Seth Ovison leads it. He's a former county auditor like I am. And I've worked together with him for years. I think we could do a better job at making the outreach to put a fence at the top of the cliff so they do it right the first time rather than an ambulance at the bottom so we come in and ding them with an audit.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little more how you will engage rural Utah in your work and make sure we know what's going on?
Oh, yes, fantastic. So when I was president of the Utah Association of Counties, people would sometimes along the Wasatch Front would roll their eyes and like, you're talking about the rural counties again. But it's important. It's such a critical part of the state. What I would do is, first off, I like the idea of a roadshow, especially with our local government division, where we actually go out and meet folks where they are, because there's nothing like actually being on the ground. And then, you know, I grew up in Salt Lake County, and I live up in Ogden, and you just don't, you can get pretty comfortable pretty quickly and think that the Wasatch Front is the state. And that's far from the truth. So I would focus on roadshows, and I would focus on membership associations such as the League of Cities and Towns, Special Service Districts, and reach out to them and really advertise that the state auditor there, yes, we are going to audit, we are going to make sure that you're following the rules, but we're also a resource, and we're not out to get you, we're out to make sure that you do it right.
Great, thank you. I noticed on your website a very long list of accomplishments that you've had in your current office. Could you tell us maybe one or two that you're most proud of?
Yeah. In 2021, when the Democrats took over in DC, their first bill, their top priority bill, was H.R. 1. And Nancy Pelosi touted it, and they said, this is our biggest priority, and it dealt with elections. And I'm a county clerk as well as a county auditor up in Weber County. I've been there 13 years. So they wanted to federalize elections. That's what H.R. 1 did, is it federalized elections. So they had a committee hearing in 2021, and the Democrats brought forward, as their star witness, they brought forward Stacey Abrams, our favorite person, right, from Georgia. The Republican leadership brought forward me to fight against Stacey Abrams and the Democrats. And we were successful. We were able to make sure that that bill died a horrid death.
Thank you. One of the things I'm always curious about in a role like yours, you have to build a team. Tell us a little bit about how you go about building a team to support you and to stay within your goals.
That's one of my favorite things is, and the most important thing about management, you hire good people. I really invest in hiring people. I've given personality tests. I've had them build bridges as a team. And the key thing is you get the right people on the bus, just like Jim Collins from Good to Great says, get the right people on the bus, and then you figure out a place for them. So you hire good people, and then you get out of their way. And you remove roadblocks that prevent them from doing what they do best. And to me, that's the mantra. And then you recognize them and reward them for the great work that they do. So it's all about getting the right people on the bus.
Thank you. We have just a few seconds left. Would you like to tell us something that we don't know or anything else you'd like to share?
You bet. I mentioned at the county convention, I'm a total nerd. I think in numbers. My DNA is baked in with the CPA Code of Ethics. So I'm like a pocket protector, total nerd, total protection. And that's what I will do for you. I will protect your pockets. I'll be your state auditor, your Utah pocket protector. Please vote for the nerd.
Okay, we're going to switch things up. We have one more person who is running for U.S. Senate, Brent Jenkins. Brian, I apologize. I told you I should have brought my glasses. Please. If you'll pick a question. Thank you. Go ahead and have a seat. All right. Can you tell me what career accomplishment makes you most proud?
Well, that's a great question. I guess I would have to say that the way that things are right now, I've been juggling all my different entrepreneurial endeavors, and so steadily over as years have gone by, I've gotten a little bit better and a little bit better at juggling all these business adventures, and I guess sometimes I'm like, hey, it's not coming together like I want it to. So to have things coming together a little bit now, I guess I'm like, wow, that's a good thing. So I'm not sure that's a very good answer, but that's the nearest I can get.
Thank you, that helps. If you were elected, what is the first bill you would draft?
You know, that's a good question. I don't really think I know the answer to that. When you're in the battle, then you look around and you see what needs to be done, where you're at, and you see what's the most burning thing that you can work on at any given time. So when I go and when I'm elected and I'm there and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, how do we preserve America's freedoms? How do we get back to limited government? I had I got to tell the story. So in 2012, I was running for U.S. House, and there was an anonymous donation that came to the Republican Party, the state Republican Party, that was earmarked for electronic voting. And up until that time, it had all been paper voting. And so the vice chair of the Republican Party is a programmer. He was and he is a guy named Lowell Nelson. And the secretary was a guy named Drew Nelson. Both these guys, Drew Chamberlain, both these guys were saying, hey, I don't think that electronic voting is going to be verifiable. And so the vice chair, so here we go. So we got, out of the 4 voting members of the Republican Party leadership, we got 2 people in this room that are saying, bad thing, bad thing, bad thing, let's don't do that. And then we got one saying, oh, it's a good thing, let's do it. So next thing you know, those of us that are saying, let's don't do this, we're thrown out of the building, and they went ahead and did electronic voting in that particular instance. And from that time on until today, we haven't had any of the cheating that we used to have, or so we think. So we don't know of any. We don't know of any. We used to find an extra box of ballots that would come along, and we'd be like, "Hey, we got more people voting than we've got delegates in attendance." And so I was like, I'm not sure that we're going to know whether or not I won or whether I lost. All I know is that the numbers are going to show up on the screen, and there's no way to verify. In the Republican Party Constitution, it says each delegate must have a ballot. And so some people would say, well, a click is a ballot. But those of us who are on the other side of this, we're like, no, a click is not a ballot. A ballot would be a piece of paper. And so when things disappear into a computer, that's when it's hard to say what has really happened. So that was, so in 2018, okay? So forgive me if, probably not everybody's going to be on board with this, my position, so forgive me if you guys want to come and beat me up. But anyway, so in 2018, I ran for U.S. Senate again. And I was like, we're still doing electronic voting. We still don't know whether or not we're going to be able to verify whether or not I won or I lost. And so next thing, I'm sending out my emails and talking to the delegates, but my emails are not going out. And then all of a sudden I get this FEC reporting violation charge against me, and I hadn't done anything illegal in my reporting or anything like that. I was all up to snuff and everything, but I knew I thought, hey, this is a shot across the bow. This is someone saying we're not gonna let you do electronic. We're not gonna let you shut down electronic voting, and so that was 2018. So the battle. So right now, there's one more element to this problem. That is automatic delegates. So there's 250 delegates that are taken away from the precincts where they would be elected by by their precinct neighbors, and those are taken and they are given to the party leadership to determine who those are going to be. So in Tooele County and Utah County said, hey, this is not a good thing. And so they said, no more automatic delegates from these from these counties. And so, but the rest of the state, still has those automatic delegates. So it pulls the power from the precincts where it's supposed to be.
Brian, go ahead and stay here. Just stay here. We're inviting all of the candidates to come back up on stage. As they come up, I just have a couple of things to report. First off, okay, candidates, come fast. We're ready to go home. Thank you. First off, I want to report and thank you so much. We collected $684 in cash. That'll pay for tonight. Thank you. You're the best. And that's not counting the Venmo. Laurie's been helping with the candidates, so she hasn't even looked at Venmo. So we just appreciate you so much for doing that. And I want to tell every one of you that is here through the long haul, thank you. Please give yourselves a hand for staying. Now, some of the candidates had to go, so we excuse them, but we want to thank every one of you. Don't clap yet. We want to thank every one of you for coming and showing Washington County that you care about us. 24 of the 25 candidates that we will be voting for at State Convention are here, and we appreciate you showing up. Thank you. You know, I went to a candidate event this afternoon, and somebody was talking to him about Dixie and how much we love it down here. And I thought, you know, we kind of are an anomaly because we love Dixie and we love living here. And it frustrates us that the Wasatch Front ignores us and doesn't take very good care of us. But at the same time, we don't want them here either. So it's kind of a catch-22. But we hope if whoever of you are nominated that you will not forget Washington County and that you will show up here and continue to represent and be a part of us. Thank you. All right. To all of you delegates, I have seen you out and about at several of the events I've gone to as I've been doing my own vetting. And I just want to tell you thank you. You guys are doing amazing, and I don't know that there's any better group of delegates in this state. And you guys are engaged and doing just exactly what you should be doing and representing your precinct. So thank you. We will plan probably the week of State Convention will be our pre-meeting. We just need to check. We'll probably do it at Washington Library because it's free. And so we need to check and see which of those dates might be available for us. So watch your emails to know when we're going to hold that pre-meeting, and so that we can all be prepared to go to State Convention. And we excuse you. The candidates will hang around for about a half hour, but we need to be clear. The building needs to be cleared by 10. So you can visit if you'd like or whatever you want to do, but we need to be out of here no later than 10 o'clock. Thank you.